Think of the coldest night you've ever experienced, the kind where your breath turns to fog, your car won't start, and your toes go numb before you reach the door. Now imagine trying to sleep in that. No heater, no electricity, just a cow next to you and a roof made of dirt and wood. That was daily life for the Vikings. Temperatures dropped to 30 degrees Cingv or 34 degrees Celsius. No fleece pyjamas, no thermostats, just the human body, instinct, and centuries of survival wisdom. Here's what life was really like during the darkest, coldest months of the Viking Age. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's Viking winter survival. But hold on, get comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows, grab that blanket. This one's worth settling in for. Your eyes snap open in total darkness. The air burns your lungs with each breath. It's so cold your nose hairs have frozen stiff. Somewhere nearby, a cow shifts its weight and exhales a cloud of steam you can barely see in the dim light. The smell hits you immediately. Hay, manure, smoke, and the sour scent of unwashed bodies packed together for months. Welcome to your life as a Viking in midwinter. You're not alone on this sleeping bench. 3 other family members are pressed against you under layers of wool and fur. Their bodies are the only thing keeping you from freezing to death tonight. Your breath hangs in the air like little ghosts, barely illuminated by the dying embers of last night's fire. Time to get up, someone whispers, but nobody moves. Getting up means leaving the small pocket of warmth you've created overnight. Getting up means facing the brutal reality of 30 degrees outside these walls. So, get this, you're basically sleeping in what modern scientists would call a passive solar house, except it smells like cow farts and hasn't been cleaned ever. I spent way too long researching Viking longhouses and their absolutely wild engineering for people we usually just think of as axe-wielding maniacs. The walls around you aren't just wood, they're like a prehistoric sandwich. Inner wooden planks, a thick middle layer of packed earth and turf, and outer boards designed to keep wind and rain out. That turf layer, it's basically medieval insulation foam. I talked to an architectural historian about this, and she said these structures rival the thermal efficiency of some modern homes, all without a single Home Depot run. Okay, picture this. Your sleeping bench is about 2 feet off the ground. Why? Because cold air sinks, and the Vikings knew it. The coldest layer of air in the longhouse pooled at floor level where it couldn't touch sleeping bodies. That's not random. That's engineering from people who lived or died by understanding how heat works. Get the fire going, someone grunts from another bench. That would be the morning's first task, reviving the central fire pit from last night's carefully banked embers. You might be thinking, why not just have a roaring fire all night? Well, for one, burning through your winter wood supply in January is basically suicide. And 2, Vikings didn't have chimneys in their longhouses. Wait, what? No chimney in a wooden house? Yeah. We didn't do chimneys, says Leif, the eldest in your family group, as if reading your thoughts. Chimneys pull all the warm air up and out, waste of good heat. Instead, there's just a small smoke hole in the roof, deliberately designed to let smoke escape slowly, while keeping as much heat inside as possible. The result is that everything in the longhouse, the wooden beams, your clothes, your hair, your skin, is perpetually coated in a thin layer of soot. But you know what? Soot is better than freezing to death. Your stomach growls loudly enough for others to hear. Another night of hunger pangs, not like your comfy bed at home where you might have a snack waiting on your nightstand. In Viking winter, your body is constantly burning calories just to stay warm. And here's the wild part. Vikings deliberately ate high-fat foods before bed. We're talking 70-75% fat in their winter diets. The reason? Fat digestion generates heat. It's like having a slow-burning furnace inside you all night. Pretty smart for people who supposedly spent all their time hitting each other with axes. You swing your legs over the edge of the sleeping bench, wincing as your bare feet touch the cold floor. The dirt floor is lined with straw, but it's still freezing. First thing you do is pull on your shoes, leather wrapped around feet stuffed with dried moss for insulation. Not exactly memory foam slippers. The sheep need feeding, says your mother, already up and moving. She's wrapped in layers of wool clothing that haven't been taken off in, well, you've lost count of the days. Months, maybe. Across the longhouse, which is really just one big room about 50 feet long, other families are stirring on their sleeping benches. The longhouse shelters 3 extended families, about 20 people total, plus livestock. Privacy isn't a concept that exists in winter. Everyone sees everything, hears everything, smells everything. Speaking of smell, your nostrils are adjusting to the overwhelming funk of the longhouse. Imagine 20 people who haven't bathed since fall, plus cows, sheep, goats and chickens, all living in one room. The smell is so thick you could cut it with a knife. But here's the thing, that smell means life. Clean, fresh air in winter means you're too close to the outdoors, and the outdoors wants to kill you. The Vikings had this saying, better to smell like shit than to freeze to death smelling like roses. Okay, I made that up, but they would have said it if they thought of it. As you help stoke the central fire, adding small sticks to the embers, you notice something interesting. The fire pit isn't just a random hole in the ground. It's shaped like a shallow cone, designed to radiate heat evenly through the room. The stones around it have been carefully selected for their heat retention properties. Bring those stones, your father says, pointing to several fist-sized rocks nestled at the edge of the fire pit. These will be wrapped in hide and placed under the sleeping benches tonight, radiating heat for hours. It's basically a Viking hot water bottle. In your head, you're doing the math. No bath for 3 months, dumb death by smell. But actually, the smoke that permeates everything has an unexpected benefit. It keeps the bugs away. No fleas, no lice, at least not in the depths of winter. The smoke has effectively fumigated your living space. Silver linings, I guess. The fire grows stronger, casting flickering light across the longhouse interior. Now you can see more clearly. The roof is supported by massive wooden posts, blackened by years of smoke. The ceiling is low, intentionally low, to keep warm air within reach. Heat rises, and a high ceiling would just create a pocket of warmth well above everyone's heads. Porridge is ready, announces your grandmother, stirring a pot of barley that's been simmering at the edge of the fire. But this isn't your ordinary oatmeal. It's been enriched with animal fat, probably tallow from last fall's slaughter. It looks grey and unappetizing, but it's calorie-dense fuel for your body's internal furnace. Everyone gathers around with wooden bowls. There's no dining table, no chairs, just people squatting or sitting on benches, shoveling hot porridge into their mouths. The first real warmth you felt since waking up spreads from your stomach outward. Storm's coming, says your uncle, who stepped outside briefly to relieve himself. Sky's that weird green colour. A collective groan rises from the group. A storm means the temperature will drop even further. It means more snow to clear, more work to keep animals fed, more strain on already dwindling food supplies. The southwest corner is leaking again, your aunt notes, pointing to where melting snow has found a tiny gap in the roof. This is a serious problem. Any breach in the longhouse's thermal envelope means precious heat escaping. It will need to be repaired immediately. Your cousin, only 6 years old, asks innocently, "Can I have more porridge?" "No," his mother says simply. "That's your portion for morning." The child doesn't argue or cry. He already understands the harsh mathematics of winter survival. Food is carefully rationed. There will be another small meal at midday and a larger one in the evening. 3 meals a day, each precisely calculated to provide just enough calories to survive while stretching supplies until spring. Your mind wanders to the storage area under your sleeping bench. Every family has their own food cache: dried fish, preserved meat, nuts and seeds carefully collected during autumn, hard bread that could break teeth if not soaked in broth first. You mentally inventory what remains. February's only halfway over. Will it be enough? As if reading your thoughts, your father says, "We'll check the fish traps today. Maybe the gods have been kind." Ice fishing is a dangerous but necessary winter activity. The nearby lake is frozen solid enough to walk on, but cutting holes to check traps means exposing bare hands to temperatures that can cause frostbite in minutes. You've seen old men in the village missing fingers from winters past. "I'll go," you volunteer, wanting to prove your worth. Your father nods. "Take Bjorn with you." Bjorn is your older brother, experienced enough to keep you both safe. Now fully awake, you begin layering for the outside. This isn't just throwing on a coat. This is a deliberate, life-preserving ritual. First, a linen under-tunic that's been worn so long it's basically a second skin. Then a wool tunic, thick and scratchy, but crucial for insulation. Over that goes another wool layer, this one felted to increase wind resistance. Then a fur-lined cloak fastened at the shoulder with a decorative brooch, the one bit of beauty in an otherwise purely functional outfit. On your legs, wool trousers wrapped with long strips of cloth for extra insulation. On your feet, those moss-stuffed leather shoes wrapped with more cloth. On your hands, mittens made from sheep hide with the wool still attached on the inside. On your head, a hood made from wool with ear flaps that tie under the chin. By the time you're fully dressed, you look twice your normal size and can barely move your arms freely. But this immobility is a fair trade for survival. "Remember," your mother says as you prepare to face the outside world, "keep moving, keep your face covered, and don't get your clothes wet. Wet means dead." You nod. These are the winter rules you've known since childhood. In temperatures this extreme, sweat can be as dangerous as the cold itself. If your clothes get wet from either outside moisture or your own sweat, the water will eventually freeze, potentially causing frostbite or hypothermia. Bjorn is already by the door, similarly bundled. The door itself is a critical weak point in the longhouse's thermal envelope, so it's built as a small antechamber with 2 doors, creating an airlock of sorts. This way, the main living area isn't exposed directly to outside air. You both step into this transitional space, close the inner door behind you, take a deep breath, and then push open the outer door. The cold hits like a physical blow. The air is so cold it hurts to breathe. Your eyes water instantly, the tears threatening to freeze on your lashes. The snow reflects the early morning light with painful brightness. "Keep your eyes down," Bjorn reminds you, pulling his hood further forward to shield his face. The landscape around the longhouse is both beautiful and deadly. Snow blankets everything, transforming the familiar world into something alien. Smoke rises from the longhouse roof hole, the only sign of human life in this frozen wilderness. You trudge toward the lake, each step requiring effort. The snow is knee-deep in places, and your layers of clothing restrict movement. But movement is life. It generates body heat. Standing still for too long would be dangerous. As you walk, Bjorn talks about the spring to come, about fishing in open water, about green grass returning, about the sun warming bare skin. These aren't just idle thoughts. This is a survival technique too. Imagining warmth, scientists now know, can actually trigger tiny increases in body temperature. The mind is also a survival tool. Remember last summer, Bjorn asks, when we swam until our fingers wrinkled? You nod, smiling despite the cold. The memory feels impossibly distant, like something from another life. We'll do that again, he promises. Just a few more weeks. But you both know it's more than a few weeks. It's months still. The depths of winter hold you in its grip, and spring is a distant dream. Right now, there's only the next step through the snow, the next breath of painful cold air, the next task that must be completed for survival. This is what it means to be a Viking in winter. Not the glorified warrior of legends, but a human being engaged in the most fundamental struggle to stay alive in a world that wants you dead. As you reach the frozen lake, you turn back for a moment to look at the longhouse. From the outside, it's hardly visible. The turf walls and sod roof blend into the landscape, the whole structure partially dug into the earth. Only the smoke gives it away. That hidden quality isn't an accident. The longhouse is designed to disappear into the landscape, to present minimal surface area to winter winds, to use the earth itself as insulation. It's not just a shelter, it's a survival machine, refined over generations of trial, error, and frozen corpses. "Come on," says Bjorn, already hacking at the ice with a tool designed for this purpose. "Daylight's precious." And it is. At this northern latitude in winter, the sun makes only a brief appearance each day. Every moment of light must be used efficiently. The tasks of survival wait for no one. As you help clear snow from the ice hole, you realize something profound. The popular image of Vikings as warriors and raiders is only a partial truth. Their greatest victory wasn't against enemy armies. It was against winter itself. Year after year, generation after generation, they survived conditions that would kill most modern humans in hours. That's not just tough. That's not just resilient. That's a kind of strength we can barely comprehend from beneath our warm blankets in heated homes. And winter has only just begun. The ice beneath your feet makes an ominous groaning sound as you and Bjorn kneel beside the fishing hole. The lake isn't happy about being disturbed. Frozen water has its own language, creaks, pops, and deep rumbling sounds that travel beneath your feet like distant thunder. "Don't move so much," Bjorn mutters, carefully clearing the thin layer of ice that formed overnight on the fishing hole. The ice feels angry today. You've seen it happen before. Someone gets careless, moves too quickly, and suddenly there's a crack and they're gone. The village lost 2 men that way last winter. Their bodies weren't recovered until spring thaw, preserved like meat in nature's coldest storage. Bjorn works the fishing line with gloved hands, checking the hooks set yesterday. The line disappears into the black water of the hole, a portal to another world where life somehow continues beneath the frozen surface. He pulls steadily, his breath creating clouds that briefly obscure his face. "We've got one," he says, voice lifting slightly. The fish emerges from the dark water, a decent-sized pike, thrashing weakly. In summer, this would be an unremarkable catch. In February, it might as well be gold. Bjorn quickly dispatches it with a knife strike, and bright blood steams on the white ice. "The gods favour us today," he says, already rebaiting the hook with a tiny piece of preserved meat, precious bait saved for this purpose. You help secure the fish in a sack. Its body is already stiffening in the intense cold. No need for ice preservation when the whole world is a freezer. As Bjorn checks the remaining lines, you scan the vast white expanse of the frozen lake. The far shore is barely visible through a light snow that's begun to fall. Everything is white, grey, or the dark green of distant pines. Colour seems to have fled the world. My hands are starting to go numb, you admit, after the third fishing hole yields nothing. Bjorn nods. We'll check 2 more, then head back. Frostbite isn't worth an extra fish. He's not being dramatic. Every winter, someone in the village loses fingers, toes, or worse to the cold. Your father's right hand is missing 2 fingertips, the price of a fishing expedition that ran too long when he was younger. In these temperatures, exposed skin can freeze in minutes. Once blackened by frostbite, there's little to be done except cut away the dead flesh. The next hole produces another pike, smaller but still valuable protein. The final hole holds the real prize, an enormous burbot, a freshwater cod that sends a ripple of excitement through you both. Mother will be pleased, you say, securing the large fish. The whole house will eat well tonight, Bjorn replies. The walk back feels different. Success lightens your steps despite the growing snowfall. 3 fish might not sound like much, but in the depth of winter, this is a significant haul. The protein and fat will fuel body heat and provide precious calories when they're most needed. As you approach the longhouse, you notice fresh tracks in the snow. A hunting party has returned while you were at the lake. This could mean more good news. Winter hunting is difficult but vital. Game animals are leaner in winter, their fat reserves depleted, but any meat is welcome. You stamp your feet at the entrance to the longhouse, knocking snow from your boots. Even this small ritual has survival implications. Wet footwear means cold feet, and cold feet mean frostbite risk. The Viking obsession with keeping dry isn't about comfort, it's about staying alive. The antechamber provides a crucial buffer zone. You and Bjorn remove your outer layers here, brushing off snow before it can melt. Only then do you open the inner door and step into the relative warmth of the main room. The scene inside has changed while you were gone. The hunting party, 4 men including your uncle, have returned with a young elk strapped to a makeshift sled. The animal is already being butchered on a designated area of the floor, its blood collecting in wooden bowls. Nothing will be wasted. The fish spirits were kind, Bjorn announces, holding up your catch. A cheer goes up from the assembled families. Your mother comes to inspect the burbo, nodding with approval. 3 fish and an elk in one day, says your grandmother. Perhaps Skadi smiles on us. Skadi, the Norse goddess of winter and hunting, features prominently in winter prayers. Or perhaps we're just good at fishing, Bjorn replies with a grin. Your grandmother makes a sign against bad luck. Don't invite the gods' jealousy, boy. This mix of practical skill and supernatural belief defines Viking winter life. You don't survive by luck or faith alone, but neither do you dismiss the gods' role in your fate. Winter is when the boundary between the natural and supernatural worlds seems thinnest. The elk butchering continues with practiced efficiency. The meat is separated by type, some for immediate cooking, some for smoking, some to be preserved in fat. The intestines are cleaned for use as sausage casings. The blood is collected for blood pudding. The bones will become tools, broth, and craft materials. The hide will be tanned for leather. The sinew will make thread. Even the hooves and antlers have uses. Go help with the smokehouse, your father instructs, indicating where 2 men are preparing cuts of meat for smoking. The smokehouse is a separate, smaller structure attached to the longhouse, a luxury not every family has. It's little more than a stone chamber with racks where meat can be preserved using smoke from green wood. The process both dries the meat and infuses it with compounds that prevent spoilage. It's a preservation technique older than memory, passed down through generations. As you work alongside the men preparing the meat for smoking, you realize how much specialized knowledge is packed into every winter task. The wood chosen for smoking imparts specific flavors and preservation properties. The meat must be cut to precise thicknesses. The temperature must be controlled through careful tending. This isn't just cooking, it's chemistry, developed through centuries of trial and error. "Not like that," says Gunnar, the village's most experienced hunter. "Thinner slices for the lean portions. You want the smoke to penetrate fully. You adjust your cutting technique. The knife is razor sharp, designed specifically for this purpose." Viking toolmaking is another winter survival skill, using the cold months to repair, sharpen, and create the implements needed for the year ahead. "How did you find the elk?" you ask Gunnar as you work. The old hunter snorts. "We didn't. It found us. Walked right into our path, half-starved and weak. Winter makes fools of even the wisest animals." "Or the gods sent it," suggests another man. Gunnar shrugs. "Gods or luck, I'll take either in February." By midday, the longhouse is transformed by activity. The central fire burns hot, tended carefully to provide maximum heat for cooking while conserving wood. Several women work on the elk hide, scraping it clean in the first stage of the tanning process. Children sort through the smaller bones, separating them by size and type for different uses. Two old men in the corner are already working the antlers, beginning the process of turning them into combs and knife handles. The efficiency is breathtaking. Every person has a role. Every part of the animal serves a purpose. This isn't just subsistence. It's a complex system of resource management perfected over centuries. The smoke hole in the roof allows some of this activity to be visible from outside, as columns of steam and smoke rise into the cold air. From a distance, it might look like the earth itself is breathing in the frozen landscape. "Sit, eat," your mother says, handing you a wooden bowl. The midday meal is simple but energizing. Leftover morning porridge enriched with scraps from the elk butchering. The fresh meat won't be ready until evening. Patience is another winter virtue. Rushing food preparation can lead to waste, and waste leads to hunger. As you eat, an argument breaks out between two of the families sharing the longhouse. "That's more than your share of liver," accuses a woman from the third family group. "We have more children to feed," responds your aunt defensively, "and we have more elders. What's your point?" Your father steps between them. "Enough. The liver will be divided by head count, as always. No exceptions." The women grudgingly agree, but the tension lingers. Winter confinement strains even the strongest social bonds. 15 people living in one room for months creates friction that must be carefully managed. Family feuds that erupt in winter can have deadly consequences. Cooperation is essential for survival. This is another aspect of Viking winter life rarely depicted in stories. The warriors who raided foreign shores were the same people who had to navigate complex social dynamics in the confined space of a winter longhouse. Perhaps the famous Viking berserkers were just men who'd spent too many months in close quarters with their in-laws. "Tell us about the ice, Bjorn," calls one of the younger children as the meal concludes. "Was it speaking today?" Bjorn nods seriously. "The ice was very talkative. It told me a foolish boy was walking on it." The children giggle, but the question wasn't merely for entertainment. Ice conditions are serious business, and children learn to read these signs from an early age. Their survival will one day depend on such knowledge. "The lake ice is thick enough for elk," Bjorn continues more seriously, "but the river ice was singing high notes. Stay off the river." Everyone nods at this information. The song of ice, the particular sounds it makes when walked upon, indicates its thickness and safety. High-pitched sounds often mean thin ice. This knowledge isn't written in books. It's passed orally and experientially from generation to generation. As the short winter day reaches its midpoint, shafts of pale sunlight briefly penetrate through the smoke hole, creating golden columns in the hazy air of the longhouse. This daily moment of illumination is tracked carefully. Its gradually increasing duration is the most reliable calendar, marking winter's slow retreat. "Storytelling circle tonight," announces your grandmother to the children. "Prepare your ears for the tale of Thor's fishing trip." The kids cheer. Long winter nights are storytelling time, not just for entertainment, but for education. The Norse sagas, myths, and practical knowledge are all transmitted during these sessions. Without writing, memory is the primary vessel of cultural preservation. The winter storytelling tradition ensures that nothing important is forgotten. By mid-afternoon, new activities begin. The women start carding wool, preparing it for spinning. The rhythmic motion of the carding combs creates a background sound that's deeply familiar. The men work on wood carving, repairing tools, or crafting new ones. Everyone's hands remain busy. You join your mother at the loom, a skill all Viking children learned regardless of gender. Textile production is too important to be limited to women alone, especially in winter when all hands must be productive. The warp-weighted loom leans against the wall, the partially completed cloth showing intricate patterns that will eventually become clothing. Your edges are improving, your mother notes as you demonstrate your technique. This is high praise. The production of wool cloth is perhaps the most essential winter activity after food procurement. Wool provides the insulation that makes survival possible. A family without adequate woolen clothing faces a death sentence when temperatures plunge. As you work the threads, your grandmother begins telling a story to the gathered children, not the promised Thor tale, but something more immediately practical. "Listen well to the story of Halfdan the Foolish," she begins. "Halfdan was a strong man, proud of his muscles and courage. When winter came, he laughed at those who wore many layers. 'I am warm-blooded,' he boasted. 'Cold doesn't trouble me.'" The children listen attentively, already sensing the moral. One day, Halfdan went hunting in a light cloak. "I move faster this way," he told his friends who were bundled in furs. He tracked a deer far from the village. The snow began falling. The wind rose. Halfdan kept hunting, ignoring the cold that bit at his hands and face. Your grandmother pauses dramatically. 3 days later, they found Halfdan's body, frozen solid, just a stone's throw from the village boundary. His light clothing had doomed him. The deer stood nearby, watching, as if mocking his foolishness. She looks sternly at the wide-eyed children. The strong die just as easily as the weak when they disrespect winter. Remember Halfdan whenever you think one layer of clothing is enough. These cautionary tales, some true, some embellished, are another survival tool embedding crucial lessons in memorable narratives. Fear is a teacher and winter is its classroom. As afternoon fades toward evening, a commotion at the entrance draws everyone's attention. The outer door opens, admitting a blast of cold air and a snow-covered figure. It's Harold, a young man from a neighbouring farmstead. "Wolves!" he gasps as he removes his outer coverings. "A large pack moving this way. They've already taken 2 of our sheep." This news triggers immediate action. Wolves normally avoid human settlements, but in the leanest part of winter, hunger makes them bold. A desperate wolf pack is one of winter's deadliest threats. "How many?" asks your father, already reaching for his spear. 12, maybe more, Harold replies. "The biggest pack I've seen." The men begin gathering weapons, spears, axes, bows. Even some of the women arm themselves. A wolf attack isn't just a danger to livestock, it threatens the entire community. Bar the livestock section, your father instructs. Move the most valuable animals deeper inside. The longhouse's animal section is quickly secured with additional barriers erected between the livestock and the entrance. The sheep are particularly precious, not just for meat, but for the wool that keeps everyone alive. Should we signal the other farms? Asks Bjorn. Your father considers this. Communication between scattered farmsteads is difficult in winter, typically accomplished with horn blasts or signal fires. But both would alert the wolves to human presence. No, he decides. The sound might draw the pack this way. Harold, you'll stay here tonight. The visitor nods gratefully. Travelling back to his own farm in wolf-patrolled darkness would be suicidal. As the men organise the defence, your grandmother pulls you aside. "Fetch my bag," she says quietly. You retrieve her medicine pouch from beneath her sleeping bench. As the community's most knowledgeable healer, she's preparing for possible injuries. Wolf attacks often result in severe wounds. The pouch contains her healing supplies, dried herbs, fungus collected from birch trees, honey preserved from summer, clean wool for bandages, bone needles for stitching wounds. She quickly inventories the contents. "We need more spider silk," she mutters, referring to the fine strands used for suturing wounds. "Check the corners by the storage area." You dutifully collect cobwebs, rolling them onto a small stick as she's taught you. This will become makeshift surgical thread if needed. Modern medicine might scoff, but spider silk has saved many Viking lives. As evening arrives, the tension in the longhouse is palpable. Extra guards are posted at the entrance. Weapons lie close at hand. The livestock are unusually quiet, perhaps sensing the predators that stalk the darkness outside. The evening meal is a welcome distraction. Fresh elk meat roasted over the fire, accompanied by bread baked in the hot ashes. Despite the wolf threat, the successful hunt still calls for celebration. In winter, you take your victories where you find them. "To Gunner's aim?" says your father, raising a horn of ale. "To the elk's poor eyesight," counters Gunner with a grin. The men laugh, breaking some of the tension. Even in crisis, humour serves a purpose. It reinforces bonds and eases stress. The Vikings weren't dour survival machines. They found joy and laughter even in the harshest conditions. As the meal concludes, a sound cuts through the night. A long, mournful howl closer than anyone would like. Then another joins it, and another. The wolf chorus confirms Harold's warning. The children huddle closer to the adults. Even the bravest warriors show respect for wolves. Unlike human enemies, wolves don't negotiate or retreat easily. They are winter incarnate, patient, ruthless, and deadly. "Close the smoke hole," your father orders. This is a significant decision. Closing the roof vent will make the longhouse smokier and less comfortable, but it eliminates the possibility of wolves smelling the fresh meat inside. It also prevents embers from the fire being visible in the darkness. Tonight, comfort yields to security. With the vent partially blocked, the smoke thickens noticeably. Everyone's eyes begin to water, but no one complains. This minor discomfort is a small price for safety. "Tell us the story now, grandmother," pleads one of the children, clearly seeking distraction from the wolves. Your grandmother nods, settling into her role as storyteller. As she begins the tale of Thor's fishing trip, a complex myth about the thunder god accidentally catching the world serpent Jörmungandr, you notice how the entire longhouse quiets to listen. This is more than entertainment. The shared experience of storytelling reinforces community bonds. The myths connect everyone to their ancestors and gods. Even as wolves prowl outside, culture flourishes within. Survival isn't just about the body, it's about preserving what makes life worth the struggle. As your grandmother's voice rises and falls with the ancient tale, you find your eyes growing heavy. The day's work, the good meal, and the warm fire combine to produce intense drowsiness despite the lurking danger. This too is part of winter survival, conserving energy when possible, sleeping when the opportunity presents itself. The last thing you hear before drifting off is your grandmother describing Thor's mighty hammer striking the serpent's head, her voice nearly drowned out by another chorus of wolf howls, closer now than before. Winter isn't just coming, winter is here, testing everything you are. You jolt awake to screams and chaos. For a moment, you're disoriented in the smoky darkness. The fire has died down to embers, casting just enough light to see shadowy figures moving urgently around the longhouse. Outside, the wolves howl, their voices seemingly everywhere at once. They've broken into the cattle pen, someone shouts. The separate structure where the larger livestock are kept, connected to but distinct from the main longhouse, is under attack. The night has turned the wolves desperate enough to challenge human territory. Your father and the other men grab weapons and torches, preparing to defend the precious animals. A single cow is worth more than gold in winter. Its meat, milk, hide, and even its body heat are irreplaceable resources. Stay inside, your mother orders as you reach for your cloak. But your brother Bjorn is already following the men. At 16, he's considered old enough to fight. You're deemed too young at 12, though you've been doing adult work for years. The outer door opens, admitting a blast of frigid air and swirling snow. The men rush out, torches held high, weapons gleaming in the firelight. The door slams shut behind them and silence falls on those left inside, women, children, and the elderly. "Circle up," commands your grandmother, the eldest woman, weapons ready. This isn't her first wolf attack. The women form a protective ring around the children, each armed with whatever is at hand. Kitchen knives, weaving swords, heavy wooden tools. If the wolves breach the main longhouse, they'll face fierce resistance. "Will father be okay?" asks your little sister, her voice small in the darkness. "Your father has killed more wolves than you have fingers," your mother replies confidently, though you catch the worry in her eyes. Outside, the sounds of battle erupt, men shouting, wolves growling, livestock bellowing in panic. Someone blows a horn, 3 short blasts, the signal for immediate assistance. The neighbouring farms will hear and send help, though it may take time to arrive. Your grandmother begins a low chant, not quite a prayer, but an invocation of protection that predates even the Norse gods. The other women join in, their voices creating a rhythm that's somehow both soothing and powerful. You've heard this chant during previous crises. Storms, illnesses, difficult births. It's the sound of women holding the world together when it threatens to fall apart. The waiting is excruciating. Minutes stretch like hours. The chanting continues, rising and falling like waves. Children whimper. The fire pops and hisses. Finally, the outer door crashes open again. Men stagger in, supporting wounded comrades. Your father is among them, blood streaming from a gash on his arm, but walking under his own power. Bjorn follows, unharmed but wide-eyed with the shock of his first real battle. 3 wolves dead, announces Gunnar grimly. They retreated, but they'll be back. Who's hurt? Your grandmother demands, already reaching for her medicine pouch. Ivar took the worst of it, your father says, gesturing to a man being laid carefully on a bench. Wolf got his leg. Harold and I have smaller wounds. The women immediately shift from defenders to healers. Your grandmother directs the wounded men to lie near the fire, where the light is best for treating injuries. The serious business of Viking medicine begins, a blend of practical skill and spiritual ritual that's kept your people alive through countless winters. Warm water, orders your grandmother, clean cloths, honey, and someone stoke that fire higher. You rush to help, bringing a wooden bowl of precious honey, one of the most valuable medicines in the Viking pharmacopoeia. Its antibacterial properties prevent infection in wounds, a fact your ancestors discovered through generations of trial and error. Your grandmother examines Ivar's leg wound first, a deep bite that has torn through fur, wool, and flesh. Modern people might panic at the severity, but she works with calm efficiency. Hold him, she instructs two men who grip Ivar's shoulders and good leg. She cleanses the wound with boiled water steeped with pine needles, a natural antiseptic. Ivar grits his teeth but makes no sound. Next comes the honey, packed directly into the wound. Finally, she closes the jagged edges with the spider silk you collected earlier, using a bone needle to place tiny, precise stitches. You'll limp until spring, she tells Ivar matter-of-factly, but you'll keep the leg if infection stays away. The entire procedure takes place without privacy, anesthesia, or modern sterilization, yet Viking wound care was remarkably effective. The honey, pine resin, and certain molds used in their medicine contained natural antibiotics. Many of their treatments have been validated by modern science. Your father's arm wound receives similar treatment. As your grandmother works, he recounts the battle to the anxious listeners. The wolves were starving, he explains, ribs showing, desperate. They'd already killed one calf when we got there. We drove them back with fire and spears, but they didn't run far. Will they return tonight? Asks someone. Your father exchanges glances with Gunnar. Yes, we need to prepare. This sparks immediate action. The community has protocols for sustained wolf attacks, developed through bitter experience. The livestock are brought into the main longhouse, an extreme measure that will make the already crowded space even more cramped and odorous, but necessary for survival. Space is rearranged, with sleeping platforms cleared to accommodate the animals. The beasts are going to love this, mutters Bjorn as a sheep is tethered near his sleeping area. The sheep aren't thrilled either, you point out, earning a tired laugh. Your mother inspects Bjorn for injuries, despite his protests that he's fine. What happened out there? She asks quietly. Bjorn's face changes, the bravado slipping. They weren't like hunting wolves, he mees. Eyes, they looked almost human when they attacked, like they were thinking. Winter wolves are different from their summer counterparts. Hunger makes them more organized, more strategic, and infinitely more dangerous. They don't just hunt, they wage war. Did you freeze? Your mother asks, not accusingly, but with genuine concern. No, Bjorn says. Then amends. Maybe for a moment. Then father shouted, and I just acted. She nods, satisfied. The first battle is always a test of character. Bjorn passed. With the immediate crisis handled, attention turns to reinforcing the longhouse against further attacks. Men drag heavy storage chests to block the doors. Others check the walls for any vulnerabilities. The smoke hole is partially reopened. Now that the wolves know exactly where the humans are, there's no point suffering in the smoky interior. We need more light, your father decides, authorizing the use of precious rushlights, reeds soaked in animal fat that provide better illumination than the central fire alone. This is not done lightly. Fuel for lighting is carefully rationed during winter. The added light transforms the longhouse atmosphere. Shadows retreat, revealing the full scene, wounded men being tended, animals settled uneasily among the human inhabitants, weapons placed within easy reach of every sleeping area. The entire structure has shifted from home to fortress. Your grandmother finishes treating the last of the wounded and turns to preparing a special tea. You recognize the ingredients: dried herbs gathered during summer and fall, stored specifically for emergencies. Some are for pain, others to fight infection, others still to calm nerves and promote healing sleep. "Drink," she instructs the injured men, offering no room for refusal. "All of it." Viking medicine wasn't limited to external treatments. Their pharmacopoeia included numerous medicinal plants, many of which formed the basis for modern drugs. Willow bark contained salicin, similar to aspirin. Certain molds were used to treat infections, foreshadowing antibiotics. These weren't superstitions, but effective treatments refined through generations of observation. As the wounded men drink their medicine, a new worry surfaces. The interrupted night means precious sleep lost. In winter, adequate rest is crucial for survival. The body burns more calories while awake, especially when under stress. A single sleepless night can weaken resistance to cold and disease. "Everyone not on watch back to sleep," your father orders, understanding this reality. "Tomorrow will be difficult enough." Watch rotations are quickly established. 2 armed adults awake at all times, changing every few hours. The roster includes women as well as men. Gender divisions blur when survival is at stake. You return to your sleeping bench, now shared with both your siblings and a young goat tethered nearby. The animal's body heat is welcome, but its smell less so. Still, these close quarters with livestock might save your life if temperatures drop further during the night. Sleep comes fitfully. Wolf howls punctuate the darkness, sometimes distant, sometimes alarmingly close. The animals inside the longhouse shift restlessly, adding their own anxiety to the communal space. Dreams, when they come, are filled with gleaming eyes and teeth. Morning arrives with pale light filtering through the smoke hole. The longhouse stirs to life again, but with a subdued quality. Everyone feels the weight of the interrupted night and the continuing threat outside. Your father and Gunnar are already conferring near the door, voices low. Their expression tells you the wolves haven't left. "They're still circling," confirms Gunnar when asked. "I counted at least 9 during my watch. 9 wolves is a formidable force, especially when driven by winter hunger. This isn't a problem that will resolve itself quickly. We need to send word to the village," your father decides. "This is beyond what scattered farmsteads can handle alone." The nearest village is half a day's journey under good conditions, longer in snow with wolves prowling. Whoever goes will face serious danger. "I'll go," volunteers Harold, the visitor from the neighbouring farm. "I know the quickest paths." Your father shakes his head. "Not alone. Bjorn will go with you." Bjorn straightens, proud of the responsibility but visibly nervous. A journey through wolf territory is a grave undertaking. "Take the skis," your father continues. "Stay on open ground when possible. If wolves approach, use the fire pot." The fire pot is a clever Viking invention, a small clay container holding smouldering embers that can be carried safely for hours. It serves dual purposes as a portable heat source and as a weapon against predators if needed. Wolves fear fire above all else. While Bjorn and Harold prepare for their dangerous mission, the daily work of survival must continue despite the crisis. Meals need preparing, water needs fetching, from snow brought inside as venturing to the stream is too dangerous, and livestock need tending. "We're low on firewood," your mother notes with concern. The previous day's plan had included cutting more, but the wolf attack disrupted this essential task. Firewood management is a complex science in Viking winter. Different woods burn at different rates and produce different heat levels. The best strategy involves a mix: quick-burning pine for immediate warmth, slow-burning oak or maple for overnight. Running out of properly dried wood in midwinter is potentially fatal. "We'll use the ceremonial stock," your father decides grimly. This is significant. The ceremonial wood, the finest, driest cuts, is normally reserved for important rituals and celebrations. Using it for everyday heating is like burning money, but the alternative is worse. As Bjorn and Harold make final preparations for their journey, your grandmother calls for a blessing ritual. Everyone gathers in a circle, even the wounded men hobbling from their beds. She produces a small pouch of dried herbs that release a pungent aroma when sprinkled on the fire. "Odin Allfather, see these travellers," she intones. "Thor, mighty one, lend them your strength. Freya, golden one, guide their path." The herbs create blue-green flames that flicker hypnotically. This isn't mere superstition. The ritual serves psychological and practical purposes. It boosts morale, creates community solidarity, and ensures everyone is mentally prepared for the dangerous mission. Your father adds his own contribution, pouring a measure of precious mead, honey wine, into the fire. It flares dramatically, sending sparks spiraling up through the smoke hole. "A gift for the gods," he explains, "and a reminder that we'll drink together again when this is over." This blend of pragmatism and spirituality defined Viking life. They weren't blindly religious, but neither were they purely practical. Both approaches were tools for survival in a world where margins for error were razor thin. Bjorn and Harold dress in multiple layers, checking each item carefully. Their outer garments are turned fur side out, a technique that improves insulation in the coldest weather. Each carries a small pack with emergency supplies: dried meat, a fire pot, spare mittens, and weapons. The most crucial items are the skis, long wooden runners that allow relatively fast travel across snow. Vikings didn't invent skis, they date back thousands of years earlier, but they refined them into highly effective tools for winter movement. Some archaeological specimens show remarkable sophistication, with different designs for different snow conditions. "Remember," your father tells Bjorn quietly, "if you must fight, fight, but better to avoid and outrun. Your mission is to bring help, not to prove courage." Bjorn nods, suddenly looking very young despite his height and strength. This journey could make him a man in the community's eyes, or it could end his life. Both outcomes hover in the air, unspoken but understood. The departure is quick and tense. The outer door opens just enough for the two messengers to slip out, skis in hand. Then it closes, barred again against the threats outside. Through the smoke hole, you catch a glimpse of them gliding away across the snow, small figures against the vast white landscape. With the messengers gone, the longhouse settles into crisis routine. Everyone has assigned tasks, with adjustments made for the wounded men. You find yourself promoted to more adult responsibilities, helping prepare medicine, tending the fire, checking food stores. Your grandmother puts you to work grinding dried herbs with a stone mortar and pestle. "Finer," she instructs, watching your technique. "The poultice needs to be smooth." She's preparing additional medicine for the wounded, anticipating the possibility of infection. Viking healers recognized the signs of wound infection: redness, heat, swelling, pus, and had various treatments to combat it. Some, like honey and certain molds, were surprisingly effective. Others, like invocations to the gods, served the equally important purpose of maintaining hope. "Will Ivar's leg heal?" you ask quietly. Your grandmother's face is serious. If the wolf was healthy, if the wound stays clean, if infection doesn't take hold, yes, but winter wounds are dangerous. We watch and wait. This frank acknowledgement of mortality isn't considered inappropriate for a child. Viking children understood death intimately. It was a constant presence, especially in winter. By your age, you've already seen people die from illness, injury, and cold. This realistic understanding isn't traumatic, it's essential knowledge for survival. As morning progresses, the wolves make themselves heard again, howling from just beyond the cleared area around the longhouse. The sound raises goosebumps on your arms. It's not just the eerie quality of the howls, it's the knowledge that intelligent predators are coordinating, communicating, planning. They're talking to each other, whispers your little sister fearfully. Yes, says your mother, not sugarcoating the reality. They're deciding whether we're worth the risk. The frank discussion of danger continues as your father inspects the longhouse defences. The roof is our weak point, he notes. If they're desperate enough to try climbing, we'll need to guard the smoke hole. The idea of wolves entering through the roof seems far-fetched, but your father has seen enough winter desperation to consider even unlikely threats. A guard is posted with a spear near the smoke hole, rotating throughout the day. By midday, the atmosphere in the longhouse has shifted from acute crisis to siege mentality. Everyone works, eats and moves with careful efficiency. Conservation is the watchword of energy, food, fuel and emotion. Even the children play quiet games, understanding intuitively that noise and excitement burn precious calories. The meal is deliberately hearty. Elk meat stew thickened with barley and enriched with preserved root vegetables. The fat content is high, providing slow-burning energy that will sustain body heat. Every element of Viking winter diet was calibrated for survival, from the ingredients to the preparation methods to the timing of meals. Eat everything, your mother instructs. We need strong bodies today. No one needs to be told twice. Winter hunger is a constant companion, the body perpetually craving more calories than are available. Even in well-prepared households like yours, winter means a slow, controlled starvation, consuming fewer calories than needed, but not so few that strength fails completely. After the meal, your grandmother gathers the children for what seems like story time, but is actually educational. Today's lesson focuses on wolf behavior. Wolves are not evil, she begins, contradicting the fearful atmosphere. They're hungry, like us. They're trying to feed their young, like us. They're surviving winter, like us. The children listen, wide-eyed, but, she continues, they see us as either competition or food. So we must be smarter and stronger. Wolves fear three things: fire, noise, and humans in groups. Remember this if you ever face them alone. This practical knowledge is paired with mythological context, stories of Odin's wolf companions, Geri and Freki, and the monstrous wolf Fenrir from Norse legend. The educational approach interweaves practical survival with cultural meaning, ensuring children absorb both. The afternoon brings a new concern. The weather is changing. Through the smoke hole, dark clouds can be seen gathering on the horizon. The temperature, already brutally cold, is dropping further. The wind picks up, whistling around the longhouse eaves. Storm coming, predicts your father, sniffing the air. Snow by nightfall. This complicates an already dangerous situation. A winter storm will delay help from the village, make hunting impossible, and potentially drive the wolves to even greater desperation. It also means Bjorn and Harold are racing against more than wolves. They're racing against weather that can kill as efficiently as any predator. Your mother and the other women immediately begin storm preparations, securing additional water, checking food stores, and gathering extra blankets. The fire is built up slightly higher, a calculated risk that trades faster wood consumption for necessary additional warmth. Should we hold a blot? Asks one of the older men, referring to the traditional Norse sacrifice to influence the gods and weather. Your father considers this. Blot ceremonies were serious undertakings in Viking culture, formal sacrifices to the gods for intervention in human affairs. They typically involved bloodletting from livestock, offering the life force to deities in exchange for favour. In desperate situations, more extreme sacrifices might be considered. Not yet, he decides. We save the blot for true desperation. The gods know our situation. This pragmatic approach to religion characterizes Viking spirituality. The gods are acknowledged and respected, but not pestered for every challenge. Divine intervention is reserved for the direst circumstances when human effort alone seems insufficient. As afternoon fades toward evening, the first snowflakes begin to fall. The wind moans around the longhouse, finding tiny gaps in the construction and creating miniature whistles. The temperature inside drops noticeably despite the fire. Your father organizes another firewood inventory, counting each log and calculating how long the supply will last under different scenarios. Conservation measures are implemented, banking the fire to burn slower, moving everyone closer together to share body heat, and distributing extra clothing from the storage chests. One layer more than you think you need, instructs your mother as she hands out additional tunics and socks. For Vikings, clothing wasn't just about modesty or style, it was survival technology carefully engineered for maximum thermal efficiency. Multiple thin layers trapped air better than single thick ones. Wool retained heat even when damp. Furs provided windproofing. The Vikings' reputation for hardiness wasn't about inherent cold resistance, it was about sophisticated cold weather expertise. As the storm intensifies outside, all eyes turn to the smoke hole, the only window to the world beyond the longhouse walls. Snowflakes swirl down, hissing as they meet the fire. The light fades earlier than usual, obscured by storm clouds. Bjorn and Harold would have reached the village by now, your mother says with forced confidence, if they travelled quickly. No one points out the obvious, that the storm might have caught them in the open, that wolves might have intercepted them, that if carries the weight of life and death. Instead, practical focus remains on immediate concerns. Check the wounded, your grandmother directs. Storm cold brings fever risk. You help her examine Ivar's leg wound. The stitches hold firm, with no obvious signs of infection yet. The honey applied earlier has formed a protective seal. Ivar himself is pale but alert, his body fighting to heal despite the challenging conditions. Good signs, your grandmother pronounces, but we watch through the night. As full darkness falls, the longhouse transforms again. Rushlights are extinguished to conserve fuel, leaving only the central fire for illumination. Shadows dance on the walls. The livestock, sensing the storm's intensity, grow restless in their temporary quarters. Storm song, announces your grandmother, and a ripple of anticipation passes through the gathered families. This tradition, singing during winter storms, serves multiple purposes. It boosts morale, passes time, and provides cultural continuity. But it also has a practical function. The collective sound masks individual noises of discomfort or fear, allowing everyone to maintain dignity during hardship. The songs begin with your grandmother's cracked but powerful voice, starting a working melody that others join. These aren't frivolous entertainment, but cultural repositories. Songs about heroes, gods, ancestors, and survival. Each contains practical knowledge embedded in memorable verses. You join in as the familiar melodies rise, finding comfort in the communal sound. Even in crisis, with wolves outside, a storm raging, and messengers in danger, the community maintains its bonds through shared culture. This perhaps is the greatest Viking survival technique of all. Not their ships or weapons or weather-resistant housing, but their unshakable social cohesion. The winter might take individuals, but it could never break the collective will to endure. As the storm howls outside and wolves add their voices to the night, your people sing their defiance into the darkness. Winter hasn't beaten the Vikings yet. Dawn arrives with eerie silence. The storm passed during the night, leaving behind a transformed world. Through the smoke hole, you can see only white. Snow has buried the landscape, with drifts reaching halfway up the longhouse walls. "How deep?" asks your father, standing beneath the opening. "Knee-deep in the clearing, waist-deep against the walls," reports the man on roof watch, "and still falling lightly. This isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Deep snow restricts movement, masks hazards, and makes hunting nearly impossible. It also provides cover for predators to approach unseen. The wolves have gained an advantage." Your father processes this information with the stoic practicality that defines Viking leadership. "We extend the siege plan," he announces. "No outside movement except for essential tasks. Double watch at all times. Ration adjustments starting today." No one protests the last part, though it affects everyone directly. Winter rationing is a sliding scale, adjusted based on conditions, with movement restricted by snow and wolves, with no guarantee when help will arrive. Caloric intake must be reduced to stretch supplies. Quarter reduction for adults. Eighth reduction for children and nursing mothers, your father specifies. These aren't arbitrary numbers, but calculated adjustments based on generations of survival experience. The morning meal reflects the new reality. Porridge made thinner than usual, with carefully counted dried berries added for essential nutrients rather than flavour. Every spoonful is consumed slowly, mindfully. In your modern bed, you might scroll through your phone while eating breakfast. In a Viking winter, each bite is a focused act of survival. "The goats need more hay," notes your mother after the meal. "The livestock confined inside are consuming fodder faster than anticipated, another resource that requires careful management. We'll move some animals to the sleeping lofts," decides your father after consideration. "Spread the fodder use more evenly." This demonstrates another aspect of Viking winter adaptability, the willingness to reorganize living arrangements as circumstances demand. The longhouse isn't a rigid space, but a flexible system that changes with needs. The sleeping lofts are platforms built above the main beams, accessed by ladders. Normally used for storage or additional sleeping space, they can be repurposed as animal pens in emergencies. It's not ideal. Having goats overhead means occasional surprises dropping down, but it distributes the livestock more efficiently through the available space. As men arrange planks to create temporary pen walls in the lofts, your grandmother continues treating the wounded. Ivar's leg shows the first signs of potential infection, increased redness around the stitches, more heat in the skin. This isn't unexpected, but requires immediate intervention. "I need birch bark," she states, referring to a key medicinal resource containing compounds similar to modern aspirin, along with antimicrobial properties. A quick inventory reveals the stored supply is running low. Normally, someone would simply collect more from nearby trees, but the wolf siege makes this dangerous. "I'll go," volunteers Gunnar. "I can reach the birch grove in snowshoes, be back within an hour." Your father weighs the risk against the necessity. Infection can kill as efficiently as wolves, but sending someone outside means potential loss of a healthy adult. Take 2 others, he finally decides, armed with fire pots. No heroics. Get the bark and return immediately. The preparation for this simple errand transforms it into a military operation. 3 men arm themselves with spears and axes. They don specialized snowshoes, wooden frames with leather webbing that distribute weight across snow. Each carries a clay pot containing smoldering embers that can quickly ignite a torch if needed. Most crucially, they wear white outer cloaks, simple but effective camouflage in the snow-covered landscape. Vikings understood practical battlefield tactics, including the value of blending with surroundings. "May Skadi guide your steps," your grandmother says, invoking the Norse goddess associated with winter, mountains, and hunting. The men depart through the entrance airlock, closing the inner door before opening the outer one to minimize heat loss. The remaining adults redistribute themselves to maintain watch coverage despite 3 fewer people. "Now we wait," your mother says, returning to her weaving. The work never stops, even during crisis. Idle hands mean wasted time, and winter allows no waste. You're assigned to help with inventory, counting and organizing food stores. It's tedious but crucial work. Each type of food is assessed: dried meat, preserved fish, stored grain, dried fruits, nuts, rendered fat. The calculations are complex, balancing nutritional needs against available quantities, projecting consumption rates under different scenarios. "Protein stores adequate through month's end," notes your aunt, making marks on a tally stick, a simple but effective record-keeping system. "Root vegetables sufficient for 6 weeks at reduced ration." This level of meticulous planning wasn't unique to your family, but standard practice across Viking communities. Surviving winter wasn't a matter of day-by-day improvisation, but long-term strategy executed with mathematical precision. "What if help doesn't come?" asks your cousin quietly as you count dried apple slices. Before you can answer, your mother interjects, "Help will come, but if it's delayed, we adjust and endure, as we always have." This simple philosophy, adjust and endure, underpins the entire Norse approach to hardship. There's no self-pity, no existential despair, just pragmatic acceptance followed by practical action. The morning passes slowly. The men haven't returned from their bark-gathering expedition, and tension rises with each passing minute. Through the smoke hole, you can see the snow has stopped, leaving a blindingly bright landscape under clearing skies. Suddenly the watch calls down, "Movement at the forest edge." Everyone tenses, reaching for weapons. Your father climbs quickly to look through the smoke hole. "It's Gunnar and the others," he reports with audible relief. "Running. Something's pursuing them. The wolves have found them." From your position, you can't see the drama unfolding, but you can imagine it clearly. 3 men racing across the snow with predators in pursuit. A deadly game where the stakes are their lives. "Ready at the door," your father orders, and several adults position themselves with weapons and torches. The entrance is the most vulnerable point, both for the returning men and for the longhouse itself if wolves follow too closely. The next moments are a blur of action. The outer door crashes open. Men tumble through, gasping for breath. Glimpses of grey shapes appear in the opening before the door slams shut and is barred. 7 of them, pants Gunnar, snow-caked on his clothing and beard, came from nowhere, nearly had Eric. The youngest of the 3 men, Eric, is wide-eyed with shock, a tear in his cloak showing how close the call was. "But we got the bark," adds the 3rd man triumphantly. holding up a sack of peeled birch bark. Your grandmother wastes no time, taking the precious material to her medicine area. The risk was justified. The bark might save Ivar's leg and possibly his life. As the men recover from their ordeal, they describe the Wolfpack's behavior in detail. This isn't idle storytelling, but vital intelligence gathering. Understanding predator patterns helps predict future threats. They've changed tactics, Gunnar explains between gulps of water. Before, they were testing our defences, making direct approaches. Now they're setting ambushes, trying to pick off individuals. That means they're getting smarter, says your father grimly, or more desperate. Both, suggests Gunnar. They know a direct attack on the longhouse is suicide, so they wait for easier targets. This strategic adaptation by the wolves isn't anthropomorphizing. It's documented behavior in wolf packs during extreme winter conditions. They're intelligent, social hunters capable of adjusting tactics based on observed results. The wolves are learning, just as the humans are. Your grandmother works quickly with the fresh bark, scraping the inner layer into a bowl and mixing it with other ingredients: honey, dried herbs, rendered fat. The resulting paste is applied directly to Ivar's inflamed wound after the previous dressing is removed. "Hold still," she instructs, as Ivar winces. "The sting means it's working." The medical knowledge displayed here represents centuries of empirical observation. The bark contains salicin, related to modern aspirin, with anti-inflammatory and pain-reducing properties. The honey provides antibacterial effects. The fat creates a protective barrier. This isn't random folk medicine, but sophisticated pharmacology developed through generations of trial and error. With the immediate crisis resolved, the day settles into a tense routine. The wolf pack remains active, visible at times through the smoke hole as dark shapes moving against the snow. Their howls come regularly, a reminder that the siege continues. Inside, life adjusts to the new normal. The animals in the lofts require care: feeding, watering, waste removal. The confined space grows increasingly rank with animal odours and human bodies. Ventilation is balanced against heat conservation, another calculation where comfort is secondary to survival. "Tell us about the elk hunt again," requests one of the younger children, seeking distraction from the stressful situation. Gunnar obliges, launching into the tale of how they tracked and brought down the elk 2 days earlier. His storytelling is animated, with gestures and sound effects that captivate his audience. This isn't just entertainment, it's education, cultural transmission and community bonding all rolled into one. "The elk thought it was hidden in the brush," Gunnar explains, hunching to demonstrate, "but it forgot about its breath clouds in the cold air, gave itself away with every exhale." The children absorb this practical hunting knowledge wrapped in entertaining narrative. Future survival skills are being implanted in their memories, where they'll remain accessible when needed years later. As Gunnar's story concludes, a commotion near the entrance draws everyone's attention. One of the watch has spotted something unexpected. "Smoke signals," he reports, "from the direction of the village." Your father quickly climbs to look. The Norse had developed a sophisticated system of communication using smoke patterns. Different configurations conveyed specific messages across distances. It wasn't as precise as writing, but could transmit crucial information quickly. "3 columns, then 2, your father interprets. "Help is coming. Be ready." A ripple of excitement passes through the longhouse. The messengers reached the village successfully. Relief is coming, though when and in what form remains uncertain. They'll send a large party, predicts Gunnar, 20 warriors at least, enough to clear the wolf pack and bring supplies. The mood lifts noticeably. Even Ivar, still feverish from his wound, manages a smile. The psychological impact of knowing help is coming cannot be overstated. Hope itself is a survival resource, generating renewed energy and resilience. We still maintain full precautions, your father reminds everyone, unwilling to let optimism override safety. The wolves remain a threat until proven otherwise. This balanced approach, acknowledging good news while maintaining vigilance, characterizes effective Viking leadership. Premature celebration could lead to carelessness with potentially fatal consequences. The afternoon brings another development. The temperature drops dramatically as the storm system clears. Arctic air floods in, creating the most severe cold yet. The difference is immediately noticeable inside the longhouse, despite the fire and body heat from humans and animals. Freezing night coming, predicts your grandmother, who can feel weather changes in her joints, might reach killing cold. Killing cold is not hyperbole, but a specific condition. Temperature so extreme that exposed skin freezes within minutes. Respiration becomes painful, and even well-protected individuals are at risk. Modern meteorologists might call it a polar vortex. Vikings simply recognized it as death weather. Preparations begin immediately. The fire is built up with the best available wood. Sleeping arrangements are reorganized to put the youngest and oldest in the warmest central positions. Extra clothing is distributed from storage. Tonight we sleep in shifts, your father announces, half awake to maintain the fire at all times. This precaution, having designated fire tenders throughout the night, is only implemented during the most dangerous cold snaps. It means less rest for everyone, but ensures the fire never diminishes to life-threatening levels. Your mother supervises the preparation of the evening meal, which is deliberately more substantial than the morning's reduced rations. Before extreme cold, calories are survival tools. The meal features preserved meat, fat, and barley, with dried berries added for their sugar content. Quick energy to fuel the body's internal furnace. Eat everything, she instructs. No leftovers tonight. As you eat, your grandmother shares traditional wisdom about surviving extreme cold, knowledge passed down through generations of Arctic dwellers. Keep your breath inside your clothing, she advises the children. Pull your hood forward and breathe into your chest, not the open air. Your breath is warm. Use it twice. This practical technique, creating a microclimate within clothing using exhaled breath, has been validated by modern cold weather experts. It's one of countless small adaptations that collectively meant the difference between life and death. If you must go outside, rub snow on your face first, she continues. It sounds wrong, but it prepares the skin for the cold shock. Again, this counterintuitive practice has scientific merit. It stimulates blood flow to facial tissues and creates a temporary protective layer that actually reduces frostbite risk. Vikings developed these techniques through observation and experiment, then preserved them as oral tradition. As twilight approaches, bringing the most dangerous cold with it, your father organizes the night watch rotations. Extra sentries are posted, not just for wolves, but to monitor for anyone in distress from the cold. Hypothermia can make people confused and irrational, leading to dangerous behavior like removing clothing or wandering outside. Watch each other, he emphasizes, especially the old and young. If someone seems confused or stops shivering after shivering heavily, alert us immediately. This understanding of hypothermia symptoms reflects sophisticated medical knowledge. Vikings recognize the paradoxical late-stage sign when dangerously cold people suddenly feel warm and stop shivering long before modern medicine formalized this understanding. The longhouse settles in for what everyone knows will be a brutal night. The central fire burns higher than usual, casting flickering light across worried faces. Outside, the temperature continues to plummet. Through the smoke hole, stars appear with unusual clarity, a beautiful but ominous sign of extremely cold, dry air. "Will the wolves attack tonight?" asks your little sister as your family arranges sleeping furs on the platform. "No," your mother answers confidently. "Wolves are smart enough to shelter in killing cold. Even they know when to respect winter's power." This is likely accurate. Wolves typically den during extreme temperature drops, preserving energy rather than hunting. Nature enforces truces between predators and prey when survival demands it. As full darkness falls, your grandmother begins another tradition specifically for extreme cold nights, the warmth tale. This is a special category of story designed to create psychological warmth through imagery and memory. Modern science would eventually confirm that visualizing warmth can actually affect perceived temperature and comfort. "Remember the summer solstice fires," she begins, her voice carrying through the longhouse, the flames leaping higher than three men standing on each other's shoulders. "Remember the heat on your faces, so intense you had to step back. Remember the sweat on your skin, the warm earth beneath bare feet." Everyone listens, eyes closed, conjuring these sensory memories. The technique works. You can almost feel phantom warmth from the remembered midsummer celebration. "Remember the bathing in the lake after harvest," she continues, "the water still holding summer's heat, the sun baking the rocks where we laid our clothes, the steam rising from wet hair in the afternoon light." The imagery grows more vivid with each description. This isn't merely distraction, but a sophisticated psychological technique for enduring physical hardship. The mind is enlisted as an ally against the cold. As the night deepens, the watch rotation begins. When your turn comes in the pre-dawn hours, you bundle in extra layers and take your position near the fire. Your job is simple but crucial. Maintain the flames at the prescribed height, neither too high, wasting precious fuel, nor too low, risking dangerous cooling. The longhouse at night is a landscape of shadows and soft sounds. Breathing, snoring, the occasional cough or murmur. The livestock shift in their makeshift pens. The fire pops and hisses. Beyond the walls, the killing cold holds the world in its grip. Your watch partner is Eric, the young man who nearly fell to the wolves earlier. He's still shaken by the experience, and Night Watch gives you a chance to speak privately. "I froze," he admits quietly, staring into the flames. "When I saw them coming, I couldn't move for a moment. If Gunnar hadn't shouted, I'd be dead. But you didn't run the wrong way," you point out. "You didn't panic. You survived." Eric considers this. "I suppose that's what matters in the end? Not how brave you looked, but whether you lived to see morning?" This pragmatic philosophy underlies much of Viking culture. Survival isn't about performing heroism, it's about making it through to the next challenge. Glory comes second to practicality. As you tend the fire together, Eric shares what he saw of the wolf pack up close. "Their ribs were showing through their fur," he describes, eyes sunken. "They're starving, truly desperate. That makes them more dangerous than any well-fed wolf." This observation adds crucial context to the siege situation. The wolves aren't attacking out of territorial aggression or predatory opportunity, but from existential necessity. They're fighting for survival, just like the humans. "Spring seems very far away," Eric muses, adding a small log to the fire carefully. "It always does in February," you reply with wisdom beyond your years, "but it always comes eventually." This cycle of despair and hope characterizes the Viking winter experience. The psychological journey mirrors the seasonal one. Darkness giving way to light, cold yielding to warmth, scarcity replaced by abundance. The certainty of this cycle provides the emotional foundation for enduring its hardest phases. A sound outside breaks the quiet contemplation, a distinct howl, but with an unusual tone. Eric tenses. "That's not right," he whispers. "Something's happening with the pack." More howls follow, creating a chaotic chorus unlike the coordinated communications you've heard previously. Something has disrupted the wolf pack's order. "Should we wake the others?" you ask. Eric listens intently before shaking his head. "Not yet. Let's understand what's happening first." The howling continues, now interspersed with other sounds. Snarls, yelps, the sounds of conflict. The wolf pack appears to be fighting amongst itself, a breakdown of social order triggered by extreme conditions. Food competition, Eric guesses. When resources become too scarce, pack hierarchy sometimes collapses. This insight reflects the detailed understanding Vikings had developed of predator behavior. Through generations of observation, they recognized patterns and turning points in wildlife behavior, using this knowledge for survival advantage. The wolf discord continues through your watch, gradually diminishing as dawn approaches. When your father rises with the earliest light, Eric reports what you've heard. "Good," your father says simply. "Division makes them weaker. Today might bring opportunity. The killing cold has passed its peak, though the temperature remains dangerously low. Through the smoke hole, the morning reveals a world transformed. Every surface covered in frost crystals that sparkle in the rising sun. The beauty belies the deadly conditions." As the longhouse stirs to life, your grandmother checks on Ivar's wound. The night has brought a positive turn. The redness has receded and the heat has diminished. The birch bark medicine appears to be working. The infection retreats, she announces. The leg may be saved if we remain vigilant. This small victory boosts communal morale. In winter siege conditions, each positive development takes on magnified importance. The psychological balance between hope and despair can tip on such seemingly minor details. The morning meal is served, again at reduced rations, but prepared with care to maximize both nutrition and satisfaction. Food isn't just fuel, it's comfort, connection, and continuity. Even in crisis, meals remain a centering ritual. As you eat, the watch calls down exciting news. Smoke on the horizon, many fires moving this way. Your father confirms the sighting. The village relief party. They'll reach us by midday if they maintain pace. The end of the siege is approaching. Help is coming. The immediate crisis will soon resolve, but winter itself remains, and winter is the longest siege of all. The village relief party appears first as dark shapes against the snow, then resolves into a formation of 20 warriors moving in tight formation. They travel on skis, gliding across the deep snow with practiced efficiency. Each carries weapons and supplies. At the center of their formation, they pull 2 cargo sleds loaded with provisions. 23 fighters, counts your father, surveying through the smoke hole, and Bjorn is with them. A murmur of relief ripples through the longhouse. Your brother made it safely to the village and has returned with the rescue party. The sight of the approaching force lifts a weight that's been pressing on the community for days. "The wolves?" asks your mother, joining your father at the observation point. "No sign yet, but they're watching." Your father gestures toward the forest edge. "They'll know they're outnumbered now." The approaching rescue creates a flurry of activity inside the longhouse. The door area is cleared. Weapons are readied, not for immediate threat, but as precaution. Your grandmother prepares medicinal tea for the new arrivals, who will be cold and tired from their journey. "Someone check the gable smoke holes," orders your father, referring to the secondary ventilation openings at either end of the longhouse. "We'll need more air circulation with so many people inside." This practical consideration, adjusting ventilation for increased occupancy, demonstrates the adaptability of Viking architecture. The longhouse isn't a static structure, but a living system that can be reconfigured based on changing needs. As the relief party approaches the cleared area around the buildings, a warning shout goes up from one of their flanking scouts. From your vantage point through the smoke hole, you see the reason. Wolves have emerged from the forest, a scattered line of grey shapes moving parallel to the human formation. "The pack is challenging them," says Gunnar, watching intently, "testing for weakness." What unfolds is a deadly ballet across the snow. The wolf pack, which you can now count as 11 animals, circles and probes, looking for vulnerability in the human line. The warriors maintain formation, using their numbers to present a unified front while continuing to advance toward the longhouse. "Smart tactics," approves your father. "They're not breaking pace or formation, just making steady progress while staying defensive." The wolves make several feinting runs toward the human group, veering away before actual contact. These aren't serious attack attempts, but assessment probes, the pack leaders gauging the threat level and response patterns. It's a sophisticated strategic approach that contradicts the image of wolves as mindless predators. "The alpha is trying to separate someone from the group," notes Gunnar, pointing to a larger wolf that repeatedly angles toward one edge of the formation. "Classic pack hunting technique," your father nods. "They won't succeed. Gorm is leading the party. See the red cloak? He's fought wolves since he was younger than you." Gorm, the village war leader, directs the formation with hand signals and occasional short commands. Under his guidance, the warriors maintain perfect cohesion while still advancing steadily toward the longhouse. Their discipline is impressive. Not a single person breaks ranks despite the threatening wolves. As the relief party nears the longhouse, your father makes a decision. "We'll create a distraction. Ready the horns." 3 men position themselves at different smoke holes with hollowed animal horns, simple but effective signalling devices. At your father's command, they blow simultaneously, creating a discordant blast that echoes across the snow-covered landscape. The effect on the wolves is immediate. Several startle visibly, breaking their formation. The unexpected sound creates momentary confusion in the pack, disrupting their coordinated movements. "Now they sound the advance," predicts your father. Sure enough, horn calls respond from the approaching party, different patterns signalling attack posture. The warriors accelerate suddenly, shouting battle cries and brandishing weapons. This coordinated aggression, combined with their superior numbers, triggers the wolves' risk assessment. After a moment's hesitation, the pack retreats toward the forest edge, not in panic, but in tactical withdrawal. They recognize the unfavorable odds. Winter has made them desperate, but not suicidal. "They'll be back," Gunnar says grimly. "Just not today, not against these numbers." The relief party reaches the longhouse without further incident. The outer door opens to admit them in small groups, too many to enter all at once. Each arrival brings gusts of frigid air, quickly suppressed as the door closes behind them. Bjorn is among the first inside, immediately surrounded by family offering thanks for his safe return. The journey to the village and back was itself a test of survival skills, especially with wolves hunting the area. His success marks a transition from youth to proven adult in the community's eyes. 3 wolves followed us half the way to the village, he recounts, accepting a cup of warm broth from your mother. But we stayed on open ground and kept our speed up. They gave up when we neared the outlying farms. Your father clasps his shoulder with pride. "You chose the right route and kept your head. Well done." The simple praise carries enormous weight. In Viking culture, acknowledgement of competence from established adults represented a crucial step in status advancement. Bjorn stands taller, his face flushed with more than just the cold. Gorm, the war leader, enters next, a bear of a man with a frost-crusted beard and calculating eyes that miss nothing as they scan the longhouse interior. He exchanges formal greetings with your father before getting straight to practical matters. "We brought supplies," he states. "Flour, dried meat, extra blankets, enough to supplement your stores for 3 weeks. The village council agreed it's better to share now than rescue starving people later." This community-level resource sharing was a cornerstone of Norse winter survival. Individual farmsteads might maintain independence in good times, but winter created mutual dependency that everyone recognized. The strong supported the vulnerable, knowing roles might reverse with the next crisis. "The situation?" Gorm asks, settling near the fire. Your father provides a concise briefing: the wolf pack's behavior, the wounded men's condition, the longhouse defenses, and current supply levels. The exchange isn't just informational, but strategic. 2 leaders coordinating a response to shared threats. "Similar attacks at 3 other farmsteads," Gorm reports. "This winter has driven the wolves to new desperation. We've organized hunting parties to thin their numbers while protecting the outlying farms." This region-wide coordination demonstrates the sophisticated social organization that allowed Norse communities to survive extreme conditions. Isolated families alone couldn't withstand winter's worst challenges. The collective response provided security that individuals couldn't achieve. As the rest of the relief party enters, the longhouse grows crowded but energized. New faces bring fresh stories, different perspectives, and welcome distractions from the siege monotony. The atmosphere shifts from crisis management to something approaching normalcy. The visitors distribute their brought supplies, not just necessities, but small luxuries too. Someone has carried precious salt, another brings dried apples, one warrior produces a small pouch of walnut pieces, sharing them among the children. These thoughtful additions recognize that winter survival requires emotional sustenance alongside physical necessities. Gorm consults with your grandmother about the wounded. Though primarily a warrior, he respects her healing knowledge without reservation. This integration of different expertise spheres, military, medical, domestic, characterized Viking problem-solving. Specialized knowledge was valued regardless of its source. "The wolf bites concern me most," your grandmother explains, showing him Ivar's healing leg wound. "We're watching for fever signs. The birch bark poultice helps, but we need more." "We brought fresh medicines," Gorm responds, including raven's fat for wound binding. This specific remedy, fat from ravens prepared with certain herbs, was particularly valued for treating animal bites. Modern analysis has shown it contained natural antimicrobial compounds. The Vikings didn't understand the biochemistry, but generations of observation had identified effective treatments. As medical discussions continue, your father and Gorm turn to planning the immediate future. The relief party will remain for 3 days, long enough to secure the area, hunt game if possible, and strengthen the farmstead's defenses before returning to the village with any vulnerable community members. "We should check the outlying buildings while we have the numbers," suggests your father. "The smokehouse, storage sheds, and cattle barn need repairs after the storm." Gorm agrees, organizing teams for different tasks. The strategic approach is comprehensive, addressing immediate safety, medium-term food security, and infrastructure integrity in systematic fashion. This wasn't reactive survival, but proactive planning. You find yourself assigned to a team inspecting and repairing the smokehouse, a critical food preservation facility that has suffered damage during the recent storm. Under the supervision of an older warrior named Halfdan, you help clear snow from the roof and reinforce a sagging beam. "Good work," Halfdan comments as you efficiently pass tools and materials. "You've done this before." "Every winter," you confirm. "Father says the smokehouse is more important than our own sleeping quarters." Halfdan nods approvingly. "Smart man. A strong family can sleep in a damaged house, but no one survives spring without properly smoked meat." This practical wisdom, prioritizing food security infrastructure over comfort, reflects the pragmatic value system that enabled Viking survival. The hierarchy of needs was clearly understood, with little sentimentality clouding crucial decisions. As repairs progress, you notice Halfdan examining your technique with thoughtful attention. Viking education rarely involved formal instruction. Instead, adults observed young people's work to identify aptitudes and interests that might develop into specialized roles. "You have good hands for detail work," he comments casually. "Ever considered learning the carpenter's craft? The village needs a new apprentice. Old Thorstein's eyes are failing him." The suggestion lands with surprising weight. This isn't idle conversation, but a potential life direction being identified. In Viking society, specialized crafts provided both community status and economic security. A recognized carpenter would never lack for work or respect. "I hadn't thought about it," you admit, suddenly seeing a possible future path unfolding. "Think about it during the remaining winter," Halfdan suggests. "Speak to your father. If you're interested, I can arrange an introduction to Thorstein in spring." This casual interaction demonstrates how Viking winter wasn't merely about physical survival, but also social continuity, identifying the next generation's skills, establishing mentorship pathways, and ensuring knowledge transmission. Even in crisis, the long-term viability of the community remained in focus. By midday, the combined workforce has made significant progress on repairs and security improvements. The longhouse feels different, not just more crowded, but more confident. The wolf threat hasn't disappeared, but its psychological grip has loosened. A communal meal brings everyone together, with the newcomers contributing from their supplies to create the most substantial feast since the elk hunt. The atmosphere approaches celebration, though tempered by the awareness that winter dangers continue. During the meal, village news is exchanged: births, deaths, conflicts, reconciliations. This isn't mere gossip, but vital social intelligence, maintaining community cohesion across physically separated farmsteads. Who has married, who has quarrelled, whose farm prospers or struggles. All this information shapes future interactions and mutual support networks. "Old Sigrid passed during last week's storm," reports one of the village women. "Went peacefully in her sleep, which is all any of us can hope for in winter." Everyone nods respectfully. Winter deaths, particularly of the elderly, were expected but still honoured. Sigrid would be placed in a temporary storage building until spring allowed for proper burial rites. This pragmatic handling of death reflected Viking acceptance of natural cycles. "And Frida gave birth to twin boys the night before we left," adds another woman on a brighter note, "both healthy and loud-lunged. This news brings genuine cheer. Successful winter births represented hope and continuity. The mother and infants would receive special community support, with extra food shares allocated until spring." Another example of collective resource management prioritizing vulnerable members. As the meal concludes, Gorm outlines the plan for dealing with the wolf pack permanently. We've tracked them to a denning area 2 valleys over, he explains. Tomorrow we hunt them systematically, not for sport or glory, but necessity. This isn't presented as revenge or sport, but as ecological management, a calculated reduction of predator pressure to sustainable levels. Vikings understood their environment as a system requiring balance. Too many wolves threatened human survival, but eliminating them entirely would create different problems. We leave 5 warriors here as security, Gorm continues. The rest join the hunt. We should return by nightfall. Your father agrees with the approach. The combined force will easily outnumber the weakened wolf pack, bringing the immediate crisis to resolution while addressing the regional threat. As afternoon fades toward evening, the crowded longhouse reorganizes for the night. Sleeping arrangements are negotiated, with the visitors accommodated throughout the available space. Privacy becomes an even more theoretical concept than usual, but no one complains. The social connection outweighs the inconvenience. The evening transitions into storytelling, with visitors and hosts trading tales. These range from practical hunting advice disguised as adventure stories to mythological narratives reinforcing cultural values. The educational content is substantial, but delivered as entertainment rather than instruction. One of the village warriors, known for his narrative skill, shares a story about Thor's battle with frost giants, a myth that metaphorically addresses winter survival through heroic imagery. The children listen raptly, absorbing both the cultural framework and the embedded practical wisdom about respecting winter's power. And then Thor raised Mjolnir high, the storyteller intones dramatically, mimicking the hammer-lifting gesture. But the frost giant laughed. Your strength means nothing against winter's bite, the giant mocked. I am cold itself, and I freeze all who challenge me. The children's eyes widen at this apparent setback for their hero. Even the adults lean forward, though they've heard the tale many times before. Thor lowered his hammer then, continues the storyteller, his voice dropping, and the giants thought he surrendered, but Thor was wise as well as strong. He said, I do not fight you alone, giant. I fight with knowledge passed from my father and his father before him. The storyteller pauses for effect, looking around the rapt audience. Thor then built not a weapon, but a fire, not a shield, but a shelter, not alone, but with companions. And when the frost giant attacked again, Thor's preparation defeated what strength alone could not. This conclusion draws murmurs of approval. The lesson is clear. Winter survival depends not on individual heroism, but on preparation, knowledge, and community. Even the gods succeed through wisdom rather than mere power when facing winter's challenges. As more stories unfold, you notice your grandmother deep in conversation with a visitor you haven't met before, an older woman wearing distinctive jewellery that marks her as a Velva, a seeress and keeper of magical knowledge. Their hushed exchange appears serious, with occasional glances toward the wounded men. Your curiosity draws you closer, catching fragments of their conversation. The infection spreads despite the birch bark, your grandmother is saying. I've tried the usual remedies. The vulva nods thoughtfully. There are older methods from before the Christ followers came. This reference to pre-Christian practices isn't unusual in your community, though officially converted generations ago. Many Norse settlements maintained dual religious traditions, especially in medicine and protection rituals. Christianity claimed public allegiance, but older ways persisted in private, practical applications. I remember some, your grandmother acknowledges, but your knowledge runs deeper. Tonight, then, the vulva decides, when most sleep, These methods work better in darkness. You realize you're witnessing the arrangement of a healing ritual that blends ancient practices with newer medical techniques, the pragmatic Viking approach of using whatever works, regardless of its origin. This medical pluralism likely saved many lives that dogmatic adherence to a single tradition might have lost. As night deepens, most of the longhouse occupants settle into sleep. The extra bodies actually improve the thermal environment, raising the ambient temperature noticeably. You drift off to sleep more comfortably than you have in days, lulled by the sense of security that numbers provide. You wake briefly in deepest night, roused by soft chanting from the area where the wounded men rest. Through half-opened eyes, you glimpse your grandmother and the vulva working by firelight, their hands moving in practiced patterns over Ivar's injured leg. They apply substances you can't identify, whispering words in an older dialect that you only partially understand. This glimpse of ancient healing practices, surviving alongside newer methods, demonstrates the practical syncretism that characterized Viking culture. They weren't rigid traditionalists or eager adopters of the new, but pragmatic users of whatever proved effective regardless of its source or age. Morning brings renewed activity and purpose. The hunting party prepares to depart, checking weapons and discussing strategy. This isn't casual preparation, but methodical planning with contingencies considered and roles assigned. Wolf hunting in winter conditions presents specific challenges that require coordination and discipline. We hunt in pairs, Gorm instructs. No one separates from their partner, regardless of circumstance. We drive them toward the eastern ridge where the archers will be positioned. This tactical approach, using coordinated human movements to manipulate predator behavior, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of wolf psychology and group dynamics. Vikings weren't just strong warriors, but shrewd strategists who maximized advantages through planning. Your father and Bjorn are both joining the hunt. As they prepare, your mother ensures their equipment is optimal, checking binding security on skis, testing blade sharpness, packing emergency fire starters. These small attentions might seem minor, but could determine survival if conditions deteriorate. Remember your training, she tells Bjorn, adjusting his outer cloak. No heroics. Bjorn nods seriously. His recent messenger journey has matured him visibly. He understands now that survival isn't about individual glory, but returning safely to contribute again tomorrow. As the hunting party departs, those remaining reorganize the longhouse again. With fewer bodies, ventilation is adjusted and sleeping areas reconfigured. The constant adaptation continues. Viking living spaces weren't static environments but responsive systems continuously optimized for changing conditions. Your grandmother checks the wounded men, paying particular attention to Ivar's leg. Whatever ritual she performed with the vulva during the night appears to have helped. The angry redness has receded further, and his fever has broken. The old ways have power. She comments quietly to you as you help change bandages. Remember that. Knowledge is never wasted, even when new ways come. This perspective, valuing traditional knowledge while remaining open to innovation, characterizes the Viking approach to survival challenges. They weren't conservative or progressive in modern terms, but pragmatic adapters who evaluated ideas based on results rather than origin. With the immediate wolf threat reduced by the hunting party's presence, attention turns to medium-term survival tasks. You join a small group venturing to the frozen stream to cut ice blocks, a winter water source when liquid water is inaccessible. The relief party provides security, making this essential work possible again. Ice harvesting requires specialized tools and techniques. You use iron-tipped picks to break through the surface, then saws to cut uniform blocks that can be transported on sleds. The work is physically demanding but methodical, with each person performing specific roles in the process. "We'll need at least 20 blocks," calculates the team leader. "Enough for 3 days melting." This precise resource planning extends to all aspects of Viking winter life. Nothing is gathered randomly or in excess. Each activity has specific targets based on consumption rates and storage capacity. The mathematical thinking is impressive, especially considering it occurs without written calculations. As you work on the frozen stream, one of the village warriors tells you about a new technique they've developed for ice storage. By covering blocks with sawdust and storing them in north-facing, partially underground chambers, they've managed to preserve ice well into summer, extending the food preservation season significantly. "We kept fish fresh until midsummer last year," he explains proudly. "The village headman traded some to a merchant ship, got twice the usual price because no one else had fresh fish then." This innovation, essentially a primitive refrigeration system, demonstrates the continuous adaptation that characterized Viking technology. They weren't simply repeating ancestral methods, but actively improving them through experimentation and observation. When you return with the ice blocks, the longhouse has been transformed yet again. The relief party brought not just supplies, but news and social connection, revitalizing the winter-weary farmstead. Children play games learned from village peers. Women exchange pattern designs for spring weaving projects. Men discuss construction improvements for the coming building season. This social revitalization is as important as the material assistance. Winter isolation took psychological tolls that regular community interaction helped alleviate. The relief visit serves emotional needs alongside practical ones, another dimension of holistic survival strategy. By late afternoon, everyone's attention turns toward the forest edge, watching for the returning hunting party. Their success or failure will determine whether the wolf threat has truly ended or merely paused. The waiting creates palpable tension. Finally, movement appears at the tree line. The hunting party emerges onto open ground, moving steadily toward the longhouse. Even from a distance, their posture communicates success. They move with the relaxed confidence of those who have eliminated a threat. As they draw closer, details become visible. Several men drag sleds loaded with wolf carcasses, trophies that represent both security and valuable resources. Wolf fur makes excellent winter clothing. Tendons provide strong cord material. Even the meat, though not preferred, is usable in emergency conditions. Your father and Bjorn return safely, tired but uninjured. The hunt was successful beyond expectations. 9 wolves killed, with the remaining pack members scattered and unlikely to regroup. They were already fighting amongst themselves when we found them, your father reports. Starving, weakened. Some showed signs of illness. It was almost too easy. This outcome reflects ecological reality. The wolf pack had already exceeded the carrying capacity of their territory, leading to internal conflict and disease. The human intervention merely accelerated a natural population correction that winter would have eventually forced. Gorm supervises the processing of the wolf carcasses, not inside the longhouse, but in a designated outdoor area where the valuable materials can be harvested without contaminating living spaces. Nothing is wasted, from fur to bones. Even parts not immediately useful are preserved for potential future applications. "The threat is managed," Gorm announces formally that evening. "We'll return to the village tomorrow with anyone who wishes to relocate until spring. Those staying should be secure now, with proper precautions." This option, temporary relocation to the more populous village during winter's height, was a standard safety measure. Not everyone would choose it. Farmsteads needed minimum maintenance even in winter, but the vulnerable, elderly, very young, injured often accepted the village's greater security. After discussion, decisions are made. Eva and one elderly couple will return to the village for better care. Everyone else, including your family, will remain at the farmstead. The improved security situation and replenished supplies make this a reasonable choice. The evening becomes celebratory, not raucous feasting, but quiet satisfaction in crisis overcome. The wolf pelts are displayed with hunting stories shared. A small portion of precious mead is distributed, enough for ceremonial toast but not wasteful indulgence. As the evening progresses, you notice the vulva observing you with curious intensity. Eventually, she approaches, sitting beside you near the fire. You saw the healing ritual, she states without preamble. Most your age would pretend sleep, but you watched with open eyes. You nod, uncertain whether admission brings trouble. Curiosity serves survival, she continues approvingly. The closed mind dies first in winter. This validation of intellectual curiosity reflects an often overlooked aspect of Viking culture, their respect for knowledge acquisition and mental adaptability. The stereotype of mindless berserkers contradicts the historical reality of a people who valued learning and innovation alongside physical capability. Your grandmother says you have the sight in your blood, the vulva adds. You sometimes know things before they happen. This reference to intuitive abilities, what modern people might call heightened pattern recognition or unconscious processing, was taken seriously in Norse culture. Such sight wasn't dismissed as superstition, but recognized as a valuable survival trait that helped anticipate threats and opportunities. Sometimes, you acknowledge cautiously, dreams that come true later, feelings about people that prove right. The vulva nods as if confirming a theory. If you were a girl, I'd offer apprenticeship, but even for boys, such gifts have value. Watch for signs, trust what you sense. Winter speaks to those who listen. This brief exchange opens a window into the complex Norse understanding of perception and prediction. They recognized that survival often depended on noticing subtle environmental signals, anticipating dangers before they manifested fully. This wasn't mysticism to them, but practical advantage, another tool for navigating winter's challenges. As night settles fully over the longhouse, the atmosphere is transformed from the tense vigilance of recent days. The wolf threat has been neutralized, supplies have been replenished, community bonds have been reinforced. Winter hasn't ended, but its grip has loosened momentarily. In your sleeping furs, warm and relatively secure, you reflect on what you've witnessed: crisis, response, adaptation, and resolution. The wolves were just one of winter's many challenges. Others will follow before spring arrives, but the knowledge embedded in your community, passed through generations and continuously refined, provides a pathway through the cold months. Winter survival isn't about conquering nature, but understanding it, working with its patterns while respecting its power. The Vikings mastered this balance not through dominance, but through observation, adaptation, and cooperation. As sleep approaches, you wonder what challenges tomorrow will bring, knowing that whatever comes, the accumulated wisdom of your ancestors has prepared you to face it. Winter continues, but so do you. Morning brings the departure preparations. The relief party readies to return to the village, taking with them Ivar and the elderly couple who've chosen relocation. The mood is bittersweet. Gratitude for the assistance mingles with awareness that the farmstead will again face winter's challenges with reduced numbers. Goodbyes are practical rather than emotional. Vikings rarely indulged in lengthy farewells. The harsh reality of their world meant any parting might be permanent, making elaborate goodbyes both painful and inefficient. Keep the south wall reinforced, Gorm advises your father before leaving. That's where the next storm will hit hardest. Your father nods, accepting the weather prediction with respect. Gorm's joint experience as warrior and fisherman has honed his ability to read natural patterns, a skill as valuable as strength in the Viking world. As the visitors make final preparations, resources are redistributed. The village has sent gifts beyond emergency supplies, small luxuries that acknowledge the farmstead's continued value to the community. A pouch of precious salt, iron fish hooks crafted by the village smith, a small jar of honey reserved normally for the ill. For the children, says Gorm, presenting your mother with the honey jar, to remember sweetness exists even in winter's heart. This poetic turn isn't at odds with his warrior status. Vikings didn't compartmentalize their identities as modern people often do. A man could be both fearsome fighter and thoughtful philosopher, skilled craftsman and sensitive poet. These weren't contradictions, but dimensions of a complete person. The departing party takes with them the wolf pelts, not as seizure of resources, but for efficient processing. The village tanner has specialized tools and techniques that will maximize the value of these materials. Once prepared, the pelts will be fairly distributed, with the farmstead receiving its proper share when travel becomes easier. We'll send someone in a fortnight if weather allows, Gorm promises, earlier if another storm threatens. This commitment to ongoing support reflects the communal survival strategy that defined Norse winter life. No farmstead was truly isolated. All existed within a mutual assistance network that recognized individual vulnerability while promoting collective resilience. The departure itself is swift and orderly. The visitors leave at dawn, when the snow bears weight best before the day's slight warming. They travel light but prepared, moving in defensive formation despite the reduced wolf threat. Vigilance never fully relaxes in winter. You watch from the smoke hole as they diminish into the distance, becoming dark shapes against the white landscape, then disappearing into the forest edge. The farmstead feels suddenly empty, though your family and the remaining neighbouring families still number 15 people. After the crowded days with the relief party, the longhouse seems cavernous. "Back to our routine," announces your father, practical as always. "We've lost 3 days of regular work. Time to recover the pattern." This emphasis on routine wasn't mere habit, but survival strategy. Winter required disciplined time management to accomplish essential tasks within daylight's limited hours. Interruptions to established rhythms could cascade into serious resource shortfalls if not quickly corrected. The day's tasks are distributed with practiced efficiency. Men check structural integrity after the storm and wolf crisis. Women inventory food stores with mathematical precision. Children are assigned appropriate supporting roles based on age and ability. Nothing is random. Everyone contributes to the survival machine. Your assignment today focuses on an aspect of Viking winter life rarely depicted in modern imagery: textile production. You join your mother and 2 other women at the large standing loom erected against the longhouse wall. Here, crucial winter work continues regardless of external crises. "We need to complete this length before month's end," your mother explains, showing you the partially finished woolen fabric. "Without enough new cloth, spring garments can't be made." This practical concern, ensuring sufficient textile production during winter for the coming year's clothing needs, represented one of the most essential winter activities. Without adequate cloth, everything from daily wear to sailing gear would be compromised, affecting all aspects of Viking life, from farming to trading to warfare. The loom itself is an impressive piece of engineering, a warp-weighted design where stone or clay weights tension vertical threads, allowing horizontal threads, weft, to be passed through methodically. The technique predates the Vikings by thousands of years, but was refined to high efficiency in Norse culture. "Your tension is improving," notes your mother as you work the threads carefully. "More consistent than last month." This simple praise carries significant weight. Textile production wasn't merely women's work, but highly valued technical skill that directly impacted survival. A well-made cloth provided better insulation, lasted longer, and required less material, all crucial efficiency factors in a resource-limited environment. As you work, your mother and the other women engage in a unique form of winter education, rhythmic knowledge transmission through work songs. These weren't mere entertainment, but sophisticated memory devices that preserved and conveyed critical information. Warp above, weft below, this is how the strong cloths grow, they sing in unison. Summer sheep give winter warmth, spring will come when cloth goes forth. The simple lyrics contain multiple layers of practical knowledge, proper weaving technique, seasonal resource planning, and psychological reinforcement of winter's temporary nature. The rhythmic nature helps maintain consistent work pace while embedding information in memorable patterns. For the next hour, you absorb both technical skill and cultural knowledge simultaneously. The women sing of wool types and their best uses, of dye plants to gather in different seasons, of weaving patterns that shed water or trap maximum air for insulation. Nothing is written, yet nothing important is forgotten. The songs ensure knowledge survives across generations. Across the longhouse, other winter activities continue with similar efficiency. Two men work on tool repair, a critical winter task when outdoor work is limited. They carefully rehaft axes, resharpen blades, and restring bows. Each implement receives methodical attention, its condition assessed and restored for spring's demanding workload. "Check the bow flexibility carefully," advises the older man to his younger companion. "Too stiff and it shatters in cold, too flexible and the arrow flies weak." This nuanced understanding of how materials behave across temperature ranges represented sophisticated engineering knowledge. Vikings weren't simply strong users of tools, but thoughtful designers who understood material properties and environmental interactions. Near the central fire, your grandmother supervises several children sorting through carefully preserved herb bundles hanging from the rafters. This isn't busy work, but pharmaceutical management, identifying, organizing, and preparing the healing substances that might mean life or death before spring. "This one for fever," she instructs, having a child smell a particular dried plant. "Remember the scent. Someday you might need it when no healer is near." The educational approach integrates multiple senses: smell, touch, visual recognition, ensuring that critical knowledge embeds deeply in young minds. This multi-sensory teaching created resilient memory patterns that remained accessible even under stress or in emergency conditions. By midday, the reorganized routine has fully re-established itself. The wolf crisis and relief visit already feel distant, absorbed into the steady rhythm of winter survival. This adaptability, the ability to navigate disruption and return to functional patterns, defined successful Viking communities. The midday meal demonstrates another aspect of Viking winter food management, the strategic deployment of variety to maintain morale. Rather than simply consuming the same preserved foods daily, meals were carefully planned to provide psychological refreshment alongside nutrition. "We'll use the smoked fish today," announces your mother, breaking the usual pattern of meat and grain. "A change will lift spirits." This wasn't extravagance, but calculated psychological management. Winter's length created monotony that could depress motivation and energy. Periodic variations in food, activities, and social arrangements helped combat the emotional fatigue that threatened survival as surely as cold or hunger. As everyone gathers for the meal, your father shares news that will affect the coming days. The ice thickness on the lake has reached walking safety. Tomorrow we begin serious fishing. This announcement generates visible excitement, especially among the men. Ice fishing represented not just additional food sources, but a welcome change in routine after long confinement. The psychological benefit of productive outdoor activity couldn't be overstated during winter's darkest period. The village reports good catches on their lake, he continues. The fish are schooling densely this year. Such information sharing between settlements created a regional knowledge network that helped optimize resource harvesting. If one community discovered effective techniques or favorable locations, this intelligence spread quickly, benefiting everyone's survival chances. As the meal concludes, another winter ritual begins, the midwinter inventory. This formal accounting of all resources wasn't merely practical but ceremonial, marking the winter midpoint and the first acknowledgement that spring, though distant, was now approaching rather than receding. "We count everything," your father explains to the younger children. Food, fuel, fodder, fibre, what remains must last until green growth returns. The process is methodical and community-wide. Every storage container is opened, its contents assessed and recorded using a tally stick system. Food stores are weighed or measured. Firewood is precisely stacked and counted. Animal fodder is calculated against livestock needs. Nothing is estimated, everything is quantified. You help with the cloth inventory, carefully measuring completed lengths and assessing remaining raw wool. The mathematical precision is impressive. People who never learned written arithmetic performing complex calculations of resource consumption rates projected across multiple future scenarios. At current use, the grain stores will last until the first spring fishing, calculates your mother, using notched sticks as calculation aids. If we reduce bread portions by a finger's width, we extend to planting time. This kind of precise resource projection, executed without written mathematics, demonstrated the sophisticated cognitive tools Vikings applied to survival challenges. The calculations weren't approximate but exact, with consumption rates adjusted in tiny increments to achieve optimal outcomes. As the inventory progresses, a startling discovery creates concern. The root vegetable storage, critical for preventing scurvy and providing carbohydrates, shows signs of unexpected spoilage. A bin of turnips has developed black rot that threatens to spread to adjacent stores. Frost got in somehow, determines your father, examining the damaged vegetables. We need to sort and salvage immediately. This launches an unplanned but urgent project. Everyone drops other tasks to help separate damaged roots from healthy ones. The compromised vegetables aren't discarded. Viking waste avoidance wouldn't permit that, but are processed immediately for shorter-term use. The rot-damaged portions are cut away, and the remaining good parts are prepared for cooking within days rather than weeks. We'll make a turnip stew tonight, decides your mother, adapting meal plans to accommodate the unexpected bounty of vegetables that must be used quickly, and pickle what we can't eat immediately. This rapid adaptation to resource threats exemplified the resilience that characterized successful winter survival. Problems weren't met with despair, but with immediate practical solutions that minimized loss and maximized remaining value. As afternoon progresses, weather changes become apparent. The relative clarity of recent days yields to increasing cloud cover. The quality of light shifts, taking on the diffuse grey characteristic of approaching snow. The wind direction changes, now coming from the northeast, traditionally associated with severe weather. Storm coming, predicts your grandmother, her arthritic joints providing a reliable forecasting system. 2 days, maybe less. No one questions this assessment. Age-related weather sensitivity was recognized as valid observational data, not dismissed as superstition. Viking survival depended on integrating all available information sources, regardless of their nature. A prediction based on joint pain received the same serious consideration as one based on cloud patterns. Preparations begin immediately, illustrating another Viking winter principle, the advance response to anticipated threats. Rather than waiting for the storm to arrive, activities shift to pre-storm readiness while conditions still permit efficient work. We need 3 days' worth of firewood inside before it hits, calculates your father, and extra water. The wood requirement translates to specific action. Men with axes and saws head to the already felled timber storage area to process logs into usable size. Women organize indoor storage spaces to accommodate the additional material without creating hazards. Children are tasked with snow collection for water reserves, gathering clean snow into large wooden tubs that can be melted as needed. You join the snow collection team, using wooden shovels to fill containers with the cleanest available snow, usually that found on elevated surfaces rather than ground level. This task, seemingly simple, incorporates sophisticated understanding of water purity. Vikings recognized that snow accumulated different contaminants depending on its location and age. Take from the roof snow, not the ground snow, instructs an older girl supervising the work, and the white layers, not the grey ones. This differential selection demonstrated empirical knowledge of snow stratification, how wind-blown pollutants created distinct layers with varying purity. The Vikings might not have understood the microbiology, but generations of observation had identified which snow sources led to illness and which to health. As you work, an unexpected visitor appears at the longhouse entrance, a lone traveller on skis, approaching from the direction opposite the village. The appearance of a solitary winter traveller immediately raises both interest and caution. Winter journeys alone were undertaken only out of necessity or for specialised purposes. The visitor's clothing identifies him before he even reaches speaking distance, the distinctive dark robes and staff marking him as a Christian priest, likely from the small church established near the regional trading centre some days' journey away. His presence is unusual, but not unprecedented. "Peace to this house," he greets in accented Norse as he's admitted through the entrance airlock. "I seek shelter before the storm." Your father welcomes him with formal courtesy. Despite the region's relatively recent conversion to Christianity, relationships between old beliefs and new remained pragmatically cordial in most areas. Religious exclusivity was a luxury few could afford when survival required community cooperation regardless of faith differences. "You travel dangerously, Father Eirik," comments your father, recognizing the priest from previous trading season encounters. Alone in winter with wolves still hungry, the priest smiles tiredly as he accepts a cup of warm broth. "God protects his servants, and I carry this for wolves who doubt divine protection." He pats a serviceable axe secured to his belt. This practical approach to faith, trusting God supplemented by a sharp blade, epitomized the syncretic nature of early Norse Christianity. New beliefs blended with old practicality, creating a distinctive religious expression that accommodated both spiritual devotion and survival necessity. The priest's arrival adds an unexpected dimension to the evening. After warming himself and consuming a modest meal, he shares news from distant settlements, information that would otherwise take weeks or months to reach your relatively isolated farmstead. The king's tax collectors will come earlier than usual when roads clear, he mentions, delivering practical political information that affects economic planning. The Southern War requires more silver. Such intelligence about governance activities, especially taxation, was valuable for household management. Knowing to reserve additional resources for spring tax collection could prevent damaging shortfalls later. The priest's circuit thus served both religious and practical communication functions. Later, he conducts a brief religious service for those interested. About half the longhouse attends, while others continue evening tasks without apparent conflict. This religious flexibility, where Christian and traditional Norse practices coexisted without daily tension, characterized much of the transitional period. Pragmatism typically outweighed doctrinal purity in survival contexts. After the service, the evening transitions to a different type of knowledge sharing, technical education. Winter evenings provided crucial opportunities for skill transmission when outdoor work was impossible. Tonight, one of the older men demonstrates specialized wood joining techniques used in ship construction. The secret is in the angle, he explains, showing how seemingly simple cuts create surprisingly strong connections without metal fasteners. Too steep and it splits under pressure, too shallow and it pulls apart in high seas. This sophisticated carpentry knowledge, developed through generations of shipbuilding experience, wasn't written in manuals but preserved through direct demonstration and supervised practice. Young people observe intently, asking questions and attempting the techniques under guidance. The technical complexity rivals modern engineering education despite occurring around a fire in a smoke-filled longhouse. You watch with particular interest, remembering Halfdan's suggestion about carpentry apprenticeship, the precise movements, the careful assessment of wood grain, the mathematical visualization required to achieve proper angles. All these elements appeal to your detail-oriented mind. "Want to try?" offers the shipwright, noticing your attention. You accept the offered tools, attempting to replicate the demonstrated joint under his guidance. Your first attempt is imperfect but shows promise, earning a thoughtful nod from the craftsman. "Good hands," he comments, echoing Halfdan's earlier assessment. "You see the grain patterns naturally." This casual interaction represents another aspect of Viking winter education, talent identification and cultivation. The community continuously assessed young people's aptitudes, guiding them towards specializations that matched their natural abilities. This wasn't formal career counseling, but organic skill matching that benefited both individual and community. As evening deepens, the approaching storm makes itself known. Wind increases audibly, creating distinctive moans and whistles as it finds tiny gaps in the longhouse construction. Snow begins falling again, visible through the smoke hole as swirling white against deepening darkness. "It comes faster than expected," notes your grandmother, listening to the changing wind sounds. "We should prepare for 3 days, not 2. This adjustment, based on sensory information rather than formal measurement, demonstrates the continuous assessment and response that characterized Viking weather adaptation. Predictions were never fixed, but constantly updated based on new data, with plans modified accordingly. Additional preparations begin immediately. The evening bread dough, already rising near the fire, is divided into smaller loaves that will bake more quickly. Water containers are checked and filled completely. Extra rushlights are prepared and stored accessibly in case the central fire needs supplementation during the storm's peak. We should bring more animals inside, suggests your mother, considering the deteriorating conditions. The separate barn may not hold against this wind. Your father weighs this recommendation, balancing the discomfort of additional livestock in the living space against the risk of losing animals to cold or structural damage. After brief consideration, he agrees. The youngest calves and pregnant ewes, he decides. The strongest can remain in the barn with extra bedding. This selective approach, protecting the most vulnerable livestock while maintaining separate housing for hardier animals, reflected nuanced resource management. Each decision balanced multiple factors: animal survival, human comfort, food security, and structural limitations. As men venture out to retrieve the selected animals, you help prepare additional indoor livestock areas. The young calves will be housed in a corner reinforced with extra straw bedding. The pregnant ewes will occupy expanded pen space in the lofts. None of these arrangements is ideal, but all are viable compromises that prioritize survival over comfort. The transferred animals arrive, bringing additional warmth but also noise and odour to the already crowded longhouse. No one complains. These are anticipated winter conditions. The pregnant ewes seem particularly disturbed by the relocation, bleating nervously as they're settled into their temporary housing. They sense the storm pressure, explains your grandmother. Animals know weather changes in their bodies before we see signs. This recognition of animal sensitivity as a legitimate information source exemplified the Vikings' integrated knowledge system. Observations from all available sources, human senses, animal behavior, physical indicators, combined to create a comprehensive environmental awareness that supported survival decisions. With storm preparations complete, the evening transitions to the most important winter activity of all, deep rest. Conservation of energy through adequate sleep represented a crucial survival strategy during winter's metabolic challenges. Unlike modern people, who often sacrifice sleep to productivity, Vikings recognized rest as essential biological maintenance. Early to furs tonight, announces your father. The storm will demand strength tomorrow. No one objects to this sensible instruction. Sleep isn't considered laziness but necessary recovery, particularly before anticipated challenges. The longhouse settles quickly, with families arranging themselves in sleeping groups designed to maximize shared warmth. You join your siblings under layers of wool blankets and fur coverings, positioned on the sleeping platform at precisely the optimal distance from the central fire, close enough for warmth but not so near as to risk sparks or excessive drying of breathing passages. The visitor priest is provided sleeping space near the fire, a position of honor that acknowledges both his status and his likely lack of cold adaptation after living in the more substantial church buildings. He accepts graciously, adding his own blanket to those provided by the household. As the longhouse quiets, only essential sounds remain: the fire's crackling, the wind's increasing moans, occasional animal movements, and the deep breathing of sleeping humans. The space has transformed from active survival machine to regenerative shelter, its occupants conserving energy for tomorrow's demands. Your last thoughts before sleep overtakes you focus on the storm's approach and the priest's unexpected arrival. Both represent the unpredictability that defines winter life, the constant interplay between planning and adaptation, between expected challenges and unexpected developments. The Vikings survived not through rigid adherence to fixed patterns, but through responsive flexibility within structured frameworks. They planned thoroughly, but adapted instantly. They maintained traditions while embracing innovations. They respected nature's power while developing techniques to navigate its challenges. As sleep claims you fully, the storm's voice rises further, a wild counterpoint to the protected quiet within the longhouse. These contrasting sounds, nature's fury and human shelter, embody the fundamental relationship that defined Viking winter survival. Not conquest of winter, but coexistence with it. Not defeat of nature, but adaptation within it. Not individual heroism, but communal resilience. The storm rages on and winter continues. The storm arrives with full fury during the night. You wake to a sound like no other, a deep, sustained howl as wind batters the longhouse with relentless force. The structure itself seems to breathe, subtly expanding and contracting under pressure. Tiny streams of snow filter through imperceptible gaps in the roof thatch, creating miniature white drifts on the floor. "Is it supposed to sound like that?" whispers your little sister, wide-eyed in the dimness. "Like what?" you ask. "Like it's alive, angry." You understand her meaning. The storm has a voice, sometimes screaming, sometimes moaning, occasionally producing an eerie whistle that does indeed sound like some vast living creature expressing rage. The experience is both frightening and awe-inspiring. "It's just wind finding small openings," you explain with more confidence than you feel. The sound changes with the size of the gap. This scientific explanation, passed down from your father, represents the practical Viking approach to natural phenomena. They recognized patterns, developed explanations, and transmitted this understanding across generations, not to eliminate fear entirely, but to place it within a manageable context. Sleep returns fitfully. The storm's variable intensity creates a rhythm of calmer periods followed by renewed assaults. During one particularly violent gust, a wooden cup falls from a shelf, startling everyone awake momentarily before the familiar pattern of breathing resumes. The shared experience, each person briefly alert then returning to rest, emphasizes the communal nature of winter survival. Dawn arrives without visible sunlight. The smoke hole, partially blocked by drifting snow despite its internal cover, reveals only swirling white and grey. The transition from night to day is marked primarily by subtle light quality changes rather than direct illumination. "Strong one," comments your father as people stir from their sleeping platforms. His typical understatement masks the serious assessment taking place as he studies the longhouse interior for signs of structural stress. The morning routine adapts to storm conditions. The fire receives immediate attention, built higher than normal to counter the chill from increased drafts. Breakfast preparation begins with stored rather than fresh snow for water. Venturing outside even briefly would be dangerous in the current conditions. "We'll need a snow clearing rotation once it passes," your father plans, already looking ahead to post-storm recovery. The drifts will likely reach the roof on the northeastern side. This forward-thinking approach, addressing future challenges while managing present ones, characterized effective Viking leadership. Each crisis contained the seeds of the next. Preparation was continuous and overlapping rather than sequential. The visiting priest joins the morning activities without special accommodation. He helps move firewood from storage to the active supply near the central hearth, working alongside others without distinction. This practical participation, religious status yielding to immediate survival needs, reflects the pragmatic religious integration typical of the period. In my homeland, such storms lasted weeks, he mentions, while arranging logs. My father taught me to carve wood figures during the confinement. It preserved sanity. This personal sharing humanizes the religious figure, placing him within the universal context of winter adaptation. Everyone, regardless of status or origin, developed techniques for enduring the psychological challenges of winter confinement. As the morning progresses, the storm's impact becomes more evident. A small leak develops in one corner of the roof, creating a steady drip that requires positioning a wooden bucket to catch the moisture. Two men climb into the roof structure to assess the damage from inside, using rushlights to examine the layers of thatch and supporting beams. Ice damming diagnoses 1, identifying a common winter structural problem. Snow melts from hearth heat, refreezes at the edge, forces water back under the thatch. This technical analysis, pinpointing both symptom and mechanism, demonstrates the sophisticated building knowledge Vikings applied to their seemingly simple structures. They understood not just construction but thermodynamics, water behavior, and material interactions across temperature gradients. The immediate repair involves carefully inserting additional thatch material from the inside, creating channels for water to flow properly rather than pool and penetrate. This delicate work requires specialized knowledge of roof construction and water management. Another example of the technical sophistication underlying Viking survival. While the men work on the roof repair, your grandmother organizes a different storm activity, medicine making. The enforced indoor time provides opportunity for processing healing substances that normally receive attention only when outdoor work is impossible. Bring the birch bark collected last week, she instructs you. We'll prepare more fever remedy while we have good fire heat. The medicine-making process involves multiple participants in a small production line. Children strip and sort the bark. Younger adults grind it using stone mortars. Elders supervise the mixing with other ingredients. Honey, certain dried fungi, rendered fat in precise proportions, determined by generations of observation and testing. Not too fine, your grandmother corrects a girl grinding too enthusiastically. Medicine enters the body slowly. Too fine, it works too quickly, then disappears. This pharmaceutical knowledge, understanding how particle size affects absorption rates, represents sophisticated medical science developed through empirical observation rather than formal study. The Vikings might not have understood the biochemistry, but they recognized the practical effects and developed appropriate techniques. The priest observes this medicine preparation with obvious interest. Your methods resemble those in our monastery healing house, he comments, though we add prayers to the medicines. We have words too, responds your grandmother without defensiveness. Different words, same purpose. The body doesn't mind which gods are thanked if the medicine works. This exchange exemplifies the practical religious accommodation common in Norse transitional Christianity. Effectiveness trumped doctrinal purity in matters of health and survival. The theological boundaries that would harden in later centuries remained permeable in this frontier context. As the medicine production continues, your father gathers the men for storm damage assessment and planning. Using a rough sketch drawn in the hearth ashes, he maps the longhouse and outbuildings, marking areas of concern and prioritizing post-storm inspection and repair. The animal barn roof was weakened in the last storm, he reminds everyone. That's our first check when wind allows. The smokehouse and storage buildings come next. This systematic approach, establishing clear priorities and sequences for post-crisis recovery, demonstrates the organized thinking that enabled Viking communities to bounce back quickly from winter challenges. Nothing was left to chance or individual initiative. Collective action followed established protocols refined through experience. By midday, the storm's character changes. The sustained howl transforms into rhythmic gusting, periods of relative calm punctuated by intense wind surges. This pattern typically indicates a storm's transitional phase rather than its end, a meteorological understanding the Vikings had developed through generations of observation. Eye rotation, explains your father to the younger children who have noticed the change. The storm center passes, we get calm, then the back edge hits with new direction. This weather knowledge, recognizing the circular structure of winter storm systems, represented sophisticated meteorological understanding developed without modern instrumentation or formal science. Vikings read storms through sound, pressure changes, wind shifts, and cloud patterns, creating mental models that predicted behavior with remarkable accuracy. The midday meal reflects storm conditions, substantial, warm, and deliberately comforting. Hot stew featuring preserved meat and root vegetables provides not just nutrition but psychological reassurance. The familiar flavors and aromas create continuity with normal times, while the meal's heartiness acknowledges the increased caloric needs during cold stress. Extra portion for roof workers, directs your mother, recognizing the additional energy expenditure of those who performed repairs in the colder roof space. This calorie management, adjusting food distribution based on specific energy outputs, represented another aspect of the precise resource allocation that winter survival required. After the meal, the storm's predicted second phase arrives. The wind direction shifts noticeably, now coming from the northwest rather than northeast. The sound changes accordingly, finding new gaps and creating different resonances within the structure. Snow continues falling heavily, visible through the partially cleared smoke hole as near horizontal sheets driven by the powerful gusts. No outside movement until morning, decides your father after assessing the conditions. We secure what we have and wait. This restraint, knowing when action becomes counterproductive, characterized Viking survival wisdom. Heroic effort at the wrong moment didn't demonstrate courage, but foolishness. Recognizing when to conserve energy rather than expend it was as important as knowing when to act decisively. With outdoor activities impossible, the longhouse transitions to indoor winter work. Every available space becomes a production area for essential items that can be created or repaired during confinement. The scene resembles a small factory with different stations dedicated to specialized tasks. Near the main door, two men work on fishing equipment, checking nets for damage, repairing broken sections, and crafting new bone hooks designed specifically for ice fishing. Their movements are methodical and practiced, requiring minimal verbal communication as they perform tasks refined through countless repetitions. The bone must be cured properly, explains one man to a watching boy. Too fresh and it breaks under fish weight. Too old and it won't hold shape for carving. This material knowledge, understanding how bone aging affects structural properties, exemplifies the deep craft expertise that underpinned Viking survival technology. They weren't simply using available materials, but optimizing them through sophisticated processing techniques. At another station, women work with leather and fur, preparing materials for spring clothing production. The winter timing is deliberate. Materials prepared now will be ready for sewing when light improves and outdoor work resumes. The planning horizon extends months ahead, with each season's activities supporting the next in a continuous cycle. This sealskin needs extra softening, demonstrates a woman to her apprentice. See how it resists the bone folder? Too stiff for watertight seams. The technical assessment focuses on specific material properties required for functional performance. Viking clothing wasn't merely decorative but engineered for survival in harsh conditions. Waterproof seams in seafaring gear could mean the difference between life and death when spring fishing resumed. You find yourself drawn to a different activity station, wood carving. The visiting priest has produced small tools from his travel pouch and is demonstrating decorative techniques to several interested observers. His skill is evident in the precise cuts and flowing patterns emerging from simple wood pieces. Each cut follows the grain, he explains, showing how his knife works with rather than against the wood's natural structure. The wood tells you where it wants to be shaped. This approach, respecting material properties rather than forcing predetermined forms, resonates with the Viking craft philosophy. Despite religious differences, fundamental craft wisdom transcended cultural boundaries, creating common ground between Norse and Christian traditions. The priest notices your interest and offers a small piece of wood and a spare knife. "Try," he encourages. "Your hands seem suited to detail work." The simple observation reinforces previous comments about your potential aptitude for craftsmanship. Without explicit discussion, adults have been noticing and nurturing your natural inclinations, a community-wide approach to talent development that characterized Viking education. As you attempt to replicate the demonstrated technique, the priest offers occasional guidance, not taking over but suggesting small adjustments to grip or angle. The emerging pattern isn't perfect but shows promise, earning approving nods from both the priest and passing household members. "He has good hands," comments your father, pausing briefly to observe. "Like his grandfather." This casual reference connects your emerging skill to family lineage, placing individual development within the context of intergenerational knowledge transmission. Viking identity wasn't purely individual, but linked to family capacities and contributions to communal survival. The afternoon passes in productive activity. Despite the storm's continuing assault, the longhouse functions as a self-contained survival system, with every person contributing according to ability and need. Age and gender roles exist but remain flexible, with skill and aptitude often outweighing traditional divisions when necessity demands. By late afternoon, the storm shows signs of weakening. The wind's voice changes from howl to moan, with longer periods of relative calm between gusts. The quality of light through the smoke hole suggests clearing conditions approaching, though snow continues falling steadily. "We'll need snow clearing teams at first light," your father plans, already organising the next day's recovery efforts. Starting with paths to the animal barn and water source. This immediate pivot from weathering the storm to addressing its aftermath exemplifies the proactive Viking approach to winter challenges. No time was wasted on relief or complaint. Each crisis simply triggered the appropriate response protocol, developed through generations of similar experiences. As evening approaches, the storm's retreat allows for the day's first outdoor excursion, a brief but necessary trip to check the nearest outbuildings and retrieve fresh snow for water. Your father and another man prepare carefully, donning multiple layers and carrying guide ropes to prevent disorientation in the still limited visibility. "Half a sandglass only," instructs your mother, referencing the simple timekeeper occasionally used for winter tasks. "If not back, we send search." This precaution, establishing clear time limits for even simple outdoor excursions, reflected the serious respect Vikings maintained for winter conditions. Even experienced adults followed strict safety protocols that might seem excessive to modern observers, but ensured survival in unforgiving environments. The men return safely within the allotted time, bringing both fresh snow and initial reports of storm impact. Their snow-caked appearance as they enter through the antechamber provides visual confirmation of the challenging conditions outside. "Drifts to the roof on the north side," reports your father, removing his outer layers. "Path to the animal barn completely filled in, but structure seems intact from what we could see." This preliminary assessment establishes priorities for tomorrow's clearing work. The buried paths to essential outbuildings will require immediate attention to restore normal function. The work will be physically demanding, but follows established patterns familiar to everyone. The evening meal preparation begins with this new information incorporated into planning. Tomorrow will require substantial energy expenditure for snow clearing, so tonight's food prioritizes sustaining nutrition. Preserved meat for protein, barley for complex carbohydrates, and rendered fat for slow-burning energy. "Add extra fat to the children's portions," directs your grandmother. "They clear snow with us tomorrow." This dietary adjustment, increasing specific nutrients based on anticipated physical demands, demonstrates the sophisticated nutritional understanding Vikings applied to winter survival. They recognized food as fuel and modified intake based on output requirements, maximizing efficiency from limited resources. The visiting priest joins mealtime conversations, sharing news and stories from his circuit of regional communities. His role as information carrier supplements his religious function, making him a valued visitor regardless of individual spiritual alignment. "The southern settlements report good ice fishing this winter," he mentions between bites. "Perch running larger than usual in the deep lake holes." Such practical intelligence, specific fishing conditions in connected regions, would influence local fishing strategies and expectations. The information network created by travelers like the priest helped optimize resource harvesting across the Norse settlement region, improving everyone's survival odds. As the meal concludes, the longhouse transitions to evening activities. The central fire is built up slightly higher than usual, a small luxury justified by the recent storm stress and tomorrow's anticipated work demands. The improved light and warmth creates an atmosphere conducive to socialization and knowledge sharing. "Tell us about the southern churches, Father," requests one of the older men, initiating the evening's storytelling and information exchange. The priest obliges with descriptions of larger settlements and their wooden churches, buildings that represented significant community investment and technological accomplishment. His account focuses on architectural details rather than theological distinctions, emphasizing common ground rather than differences. "The new church at Kaupang has supporting posts carved like our ancestral pillars," he describes, Christian symbols mixed with traditional patterns, beautiful craftsmanship that honors both old skills and new faith. This cultural synthesis, traditional Norse aesthetics applied to Christian structures, characterized the pragmatic religious transition underway. Rather than sharp replacement, elements blended gradually, creating distinctive expressions that respected continuity while accommodating change. The conversation expands to include other community members sharing news or stories from their own experiences. This evening exchange serves multiple functions: entertainment, education, social bonding, and practical information sharing. In a world without formal media, communal storytelling created both cultural continuity and adaptive information networks. As night deepens and the storm continues its gradual retreat, the longhouse prepares for sleep. Tomorrow will bring heavy physical demands as the community addresses storm damage and restores normal function to the farmstead. Rest becomes a priority, with conversation diminishing and sleeping areas prepared methodically. The visiting priest joins evening prayers with those who follow Christian practices, while others observe different traditions or simply prepare for sleep without formal ritual. This religious coexistence, multiple practices within shared space, reflected the practical accommodation that characterized Norse transitional Christianity. "We clear from the main door outward at first light," your father reminds everyone as the longhouse settles. Age-ordered teams, rotating work, pace for endurance, not speed. These final instructions establish the framework for tomorrow's recovery effort. The approach emphasizes sustainability, maintaining steady effort rather than exhausting workers with initial intensity. Winter survival required energy management across extended time frames, not heroic but unsustainable bursts. As you settle into your sleeping furs, physical weariness combines with mental stimulation from the day's varied activities. The storm continues retreating, its voice now a background murmur rather than dominant presence. The longhouse creaks occasionally as timbers adjust to changing wind pressure, but the sound is familiar and reassuring rather than concerning. Your thoughts drift to the small wood carving you began under the priest's guidance. Something about the process, working with natural material to create both beauty and function, resonates deeply. The potential future as a craftsman seems more tangible now, a path that might align with your natural aptitudes. Around you, family members settle into sleep positions refined through countless winter nights. Bodies arrange themselves for optimal heat sharing, with the youngest and oldest in the warmest central positions. The breathing rhythm of the entire household gradually synchronizes, a subtle but powerful example of the unconscious coordination that characterized Viking communal life. Outside, the storm leaves its mark on the landscape, transforming familiar terrain into new formations that will require adaptation. Inside, human resilience prepares for that adaptation with earned rest and practical planning. The cycle continues as it has for generations. Challenge and response, nature's power and human adaptability in constant conversation. This is Viking winter, not merely survived but inhabited fully, not just endured but incorporated into the cycle that defines northern life, not conquered but negotiated with through generations of accumulated wisdom. Sleep comes easily despite the lingering storm sounds. Tomorrow brings its own challenges, but tonight, within the sheltering longhouse, winter's grip loosens just enough for rest. And sometimes that's victory enough. Morning arrives with unexpected brightness. The storm has fully passed, leaving behind a transformed world bathed in brilliant sunlight. Through the smoke hole, you glimpse a sky of perfect blue, a rare midwinter gift that lifts spirits throughout the longhouse. "Sunday," announces your grandmother with satisfaction, a good omen for clearing work. This simple observation carries cultural weight. In Norse understanding, weather patterns weren't merely physical phenomena, but communications from natural and supernatural forces. A clear sky following difficult days suggested divine favor, practical encouragement to tackle the challenging work ahead. The longhouse stirs to life with renewed energy. The mood shifts noticeably from storm-bound endurance to recovery action. Breakfast is substantial but quick. No time for lingering when daylight is precious and outdoor work extensive. Remember the system, your father instructs, as people prepare for snow clearing. Work pairs, regular rotation. No single person stays outside until exhaustion. This structured approach to recovery work, emphasizing sustainable pacing rather than heroic individual effort, reflected the Viking understanding that winter survival required consistent collective action rather than isolated feats of strength. You're paired with your cousin for the first clearing shift. Together, you don appropriate outdoor clothing, multiple wool layers, waterproof outer garments, and protective coverings for hands and feet. The process is methodical, with experienced adults checking younger workers' preparations to ensure adequate protection. Mittens, not finger gloves, corrects your mother, swapping your chosen hand coverings for a warmer option. Fingers together stay warmer than fingers apart. This practical knowledge, understanding how body heat conservation works in extreme conditions, came from generations of winter experience. Vikings didn't simply endure cold, they developed sophisticated strategies to work effectively within it. The first step outside takes your breath away, not just from cold, but from the visual impact. The familiar farmstead landscape has vanished, replaced by an alien terrain of sweeping white sculptures. Wind-carved snow formations create drifts taller than a man, completely burying smaller structures and transforming pathways into deep trenches. "Thor's hammer," mutters your cousin, momentarily overwhelmed by the transformation. The priest, joining the clearing work without hesitation, offers his own perspective. God's canvas, he suggests, finding beauty in the challenge before them. Work begins immediately, following the established protocol. The main door area receives first attention, with teams widening the narrow path initially created during the morning's first tentative excursion. Wooden shovels, specifically designed with broad blades for snow movement, cut into the packed drifts systematically. You quickly discover that snow removal isn't simply brute labor, but technical skill. Different snow types require different approaches. The light, powdery surface layer can be brushed aside efficiently. The wind-packed middle layer requires firm shovel strokes at the correct angle. The bottom layer, compressed by weight, sometimes needs breaking before removal. Cut blocks from the compressed snow, demonstrates an older worker. They hold shape for building windbreaks later. This resourceful approach, turning the problem, excess snow, into a solution, building material, exemplified Viking pragmatism. Challenges weren't simply overcome, but transformed into opportunities through creative adaptation. The work rotation functions smoothly, with teams cycling between outdoor clearing and indoor recovery periods. This prevents cold injury while maintaining steady progress on essential pathways. First priority goes to the animal barn access, where livestock held through the storm need immediate attention. Animals first, then water access, then roof clearing, recites your father, reinforcing the priority sequence. Storage buildings last unless damage is spotted. This organized approach, addressing needs in survival priority order, demonstrated the systematic thinking that underpinned Viking winter resilience. Nothing was random. Everything followed protocols refined through generations of experience. When your first work shift ends, you return to the longhouse with flushed cheeks and tired arms. The contrast between outdoor brilliance and indoor dimness temporarily blinds you. The warmth feels wonderful after the intense cold, though you know better than to approach the fire immediately. Too rapid temperature change brings its own dangers. Slow warming, reminds your grandmother, directing you to remove outer layers gradually rather than rushing to the hearth. Let the blood return to fingers and toes naturally. This medical knowledge, understanding peripheral circulation recovery, represented sophisticated physiological awareness developed through observation rather than formal study. Vikings recognized cold injury patterns and developed preventive protocols based on empirical evidence. As the morning progresses, the farmstead gradually re-emerges from its snow burial. Essential pathways become navigable, though bordered by snow walls taller than a child. The animal barn, once reached, reveals no significant damage beyond minor roof leakage, already resolving as interior heat rises. The visiting priest works alongside everyone else, his religious status creating no exemption from necessary labor. When his rotation brings him inside, he uses rest periods to continue the wood-carving demonstration begun during the storm, creating small but beautiful objects from simple materials. In my homeland village, he explains while working, winter carvings became family treasures, simple wood transformed by patience and skill. This cultural sharing, connecting Norse experience to other northern peoples' winter adaptations, created bonds that transcended religious or political differences. The shared challenge of winter survival united diverse communities in practical respect for each other's solutions. By midday, the critical recovery work has progressed significantly. Pathways to essential structures have been cleared, livestock have been tended, their confined quarters cleaned and resupplied with fodder. Water access has been restored through strategic snow melting rather than attempted stream clearing. Another example of working with winter conditions rather than fighting them directly. The midday meal brings everyone together briefly, providing necessary caloric replenishment and opportunity to coordinate afternoon efforts. The food is simple but energy-dense: preserved meat, grain porridge enriched with fat, and dried fruits reconstituted in warm water. Every element serves specific nutritional purposes, addressing the high energy demands of cold weather physical labor. Good progress, assesses your father. Afternoon focus shifts to roof clearing and structure inspection. This transition from ground-level pathway clearing to elevated structural work follows logical sequence. Basic access and animal welfare established first, then attention to building integrity that might affect longer-term security. The roof clearing represents more specialized work, involving greater risk and technical skill than pathway shoveling. Teams are reconfigured, with the most experienced workers handling the elevated tasks. You're assigned to a ground support role, moving cleared snow away from building foundations and monitoring for falling ice. Watch the south eave carefully, instructs the team leader. Ice damming there could release suddenly. This safety awareness, identifying specific hazards rather than general cautions, reflected the precision of Viking risk management. Experience had taught which roof sections developed dangerous ice formations and under what conditions they might fall. As afternoon advances, the recovery work expands to include damage assessment and minor repairs. Several storage buildings show signs of storm impact: a door torn from leather hinges, roof corner thatch displaced by wind, a support post leaning slightly from snow load pressure. Each issue is addressed methodically, with repairs prioritized by structural importance and weather vulnerability. Nothing is left for later that might compromise survival resources, unlike modern home maintenance, which often defers non-critical repairs. Viking winter damage control was immediate and comprehensive. Even small openings become large problems, explains a man repairing a seemingly minor gap in a storeroom wall. Winter finds every weakness. This understanding that small vulnerabilities quickly escalate in harsh conditions underpinned the Viking approach to maintenance. Preventive attention to minor issues prevented catastrophic failures later when resources for major repairs might be unavailable. By late afternoon, the recovery effort transitions from emergency response to normal winter functioning. The basic farmstead operation has been restored, with essential structures secured and pathways established. The work rhythm shifts accordingly, moving from intense collective action to more individualized, regular tasks. You find yourself assigned to ice fishing preparation, helping check equipment and prepare bait for tomorrow's expedition to the now accessible lake. The storm's passing has created ideal conditions for this crucial winter food gathering activity. Clear weather improves safety, while the barometric pressure changes often trigger increased fish activity. The perch will be hungry after the storm, predicts an experienced fisherman as you help organize line and hooks. They sense the pressure change and feed heavily afterward. This detailed understanding of fish behavior in relation to weather patterns represented sophisticated ecological knowledge developed through generations of observation. Vikings weren't simply opportunistic hunters, but studied naturalists who recognized complex relationships between environmental conditions and animal behaviors. As daylight begins fading, still limited in these midwinter weeks, the community turns attention to evening needs. The priest, preparing to continue his journey tomorrow, helps with final organization of the carving tools he's been demonstrating during his stay. "You have natural ability," he tells you, noting your progress with the simple decorative patterns. "The wood responds to your hands." This encouragement, specific to observed aptitude rather than general praise, reflects the Viking approach to talent development. Young people received honest assessment of their capabilities, guiding them towards specializations that matched their natural inclinations and community needs. The evening meal preparation becomes a community activity with many hands contributing to create a slightly special feast acknowledging both the storm's passing and the priest's departure. While still using preserved winter stores, the meal incorporates variety and thoughtful combination that elevates it beyond basic sustenance. "We add the dried cranberries tonight," decides your mother, authorizing use of a valued preserve typically reserved for special occasions. Good work deserves recognition. This balanced approach to resource use, maintaining strict conservation during crisis while allowing a measured celebration during respite, characterized Viking winter management. Morale was recognized as a survival resource alongside physical supplies, requiring occasional investment even during scarcity. As the community gathers for the evening meal, conversation flows more easily than during storm confinement. The shared accomplishment of effective recovery creates natural bonds, while the visiting priest's imminent departure prompts exchange of information and farewell sentiments. "The Southern Church sends these," he says, producing small wooden crosses from his travel bag, simple carvings that nonetheless represent significant resource investment in wood and labor during winter. For those who wish them, no obligation. This respectful offering, presented without pressure or expectation, exemplifies the diplomatic religious integration common in Norse transitional Christianity. Faith spread through relationship and cultural exchange rather than force or demand, particularly in remote regions where community cooperation remained essential for survival. Some family members accept the crosses with genuine appreciation, others decline politely but without hostility. The moment passes without tension, demonstrating the practical religious pluralism that characterized many Viking communities during this period. Survival cooperation transcended theological differences that might become divisive in more secure environments. As the meal concludes, the evening transitions to quieter activities appropriate for the day's physical exertion and tomorrow's anticipated work. Unlike the animated storytelling of storm confinement, tonight's atmosphere encourages restful conversation and reflective sharing. Your grandmother initiates a different kind of knowledge transmission, winter wisdom sharing. Rather than dramatic sagas or practical instruction, she invites contemplative observation about winter's deeper meanings. This tradition, occurring at specific points in the winter cycle, encouraged philosophical reflection alongside practical survival. "What does winter teach that summer cannot?" she asks, posing the traditional opening question to the gathered community. The responses come slowly, thoughtfully, often after considerable reflection. There is no rush, no competition to speak first or most eloquently. The conversation unfolds like the winter itself, unhurried, deep, with pauses that hold meaning rather than emptiness. Winter teaches patience, offers an older man. Summer rewards immediate action. Winter rewards careful waiting. Winter teaches truth, suggests another. Summer allows pretense and decoration. Winter strips everything to essentials. Winter teaches interdependence, adds your mother. Summer permits the illusion of self-sufficiency. Winter reveals our need for others. The observations continue, building a composite wisdom that connects practical survival experience to deeper human insights. This wasn't abstract philosophy, but embodied understanding, drawn from lived experience rather than theoretical contemplation. When your turn comes, you consider carefully before speaking. Winter teaches appreciation, you offer. Summer's abundance can be taken for granted. Winter's scarcity makes us value what remains. Your contribution receives thoughtful nods, particularly from the visiting priest, who recognizes the universal truth that transcends specific cultural or religious frameworks. This winter wisdom tradition created common ground where diverse perspectives could converge around shared human experience. The priest adds his own observation when invited. Winter teaches humility, he suggests. Summer allows the illusion of human dominance over nature. Winter restores proper perspective. This contribution, respecting the traditional format while adding complementary insight, demonstrates cultural integration rather than replacement. The Christian perspective enriches rather than contradicts the Norse wisdom tradition, finding harmony rather than conflict. As evening deepens toward night, the longhouse prepares for sleep. The day's physical exertion combines with emotional release following the storm's passage to create profound tiredness throughout the community. Bodies that worked hard in cold conditions now seek restoration through rest. The visiting priest joins evening Christian prayers with those who follow that tradition, while others observe different practices or simply prepare for sleep without formal ritual. The longhouse accommodates this diversity without tension, creating space for multiple expressions within shared shelter. "We fish at first light," reminds your father as people settle onto sleeping platforms. The lake ice will be perfect after the storm, swept clear of snow by wind in many places. This forward focus, already organizing tomorrow's essential activities, exemplifies the continuous planning that characterized Viking winter survival, each day connected to the next in an unbroken chain of resource management and opportunity optimization. As you arrange your sleeping furs, your grandmother pauses beside your platform, speaking softly to avoid disturbing others already drifting towards sleep. "You did well today," she says simply. "Your grandfather would be proud of your work and your words." This intergenerational connection, linking your efforts to ancestral approval, represents the temporal continuity that defined Viking identity. Individual actions gained meaning through their place in familial and community lineage, connecting past, present, and future through shared values and adaptive knowledge. Sleep approaches swiftly after the day's exertion. Your last conscious thoughts drift between practical anticipation of tomorrow's fishing and reflective appreciation of the winter wisdom shared tonight. Both dimensions, practical survival and meaningful understanding, coexist naturally in the Viking winter experience. Outside, the cleared farmstead rests under brilliant stars, the temperature plummeting in the storm's aftermath. Inside, the longhouse holds its inhabitants in sheltered community, bodies sharing warmth as naturally as minds share knowledge. This was Viking winter survival, not merely enduring until spring, but inhabiting the cold months fully, with practical skill and thoughtful presence. Not just surviving winter, but incorporating it into the complete cycle that defined northern life. From your warm, safe bed in the modern world, this ancient winter wisdom still resonates. The Vikings faced winter's challenges not with our technology, but with community, knowledge, and adaptation that modern societies sometimes forget. Their lessons speak across centuries: resilience through cooperation, security through preparation, meaning through acceptance of natural cycles. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps there's comfort in knowing that humans have always faced challenges through connection and creativity, that warmth has always been found not just in fire, but in shared purpose, that darkness has always eventually yielded to light. Winter still comes. But so does spring. Rest now, knowing that cycles continue, challenges pass, and human ingenuity endures, just as it always has.